Chapter 865. Ningqing didn't pay attention to Peng Ruimei's words at all. Although he didn't sweep out with his spiritual consciousness, he could clearly feel that there were many people in this hall far stronger than him. A few of them even had strength comparable to the red-haired powerhouse he met in the Grand SNC. Although there were many people in the hall, no one made any noise. Even friends who knew each other would try to use voice transmissions or whisper to each other. After another half an incense stick worth of time, a middle-aged man dressed like a Confucian scholar walked to the round table in the middle of the trading hall and cupped his fists before speaking. "Thank you, Dao friends, for coming to the Grand Essence Ruins Quest Merchant House's Dao Confirming Exchange. Our Dao Confirming Exchange is held every 3 years, and a lot of treasures are traded during it. The Dao Confirming Exchange has also created countless powerhouses. We hope that all the fellow Taoists sitting here today will be able to leave with a satisfied heart and obtain what they want. The Dao Confirming Exchange will still follow the old rules. The merchant house will take 1% of the transaction value of both parties." 1% of the transaction value wasn't much. As someone who came from Earth, Ningqing naturally understood that the main purpose of this merchant house wasn't to earn points but to build popularity. To enter this exchange, one must have a silver card, and to get a silver card, one must spend a lot of points. Even if the merchant house didn't take a single point, the more such exchange fairs were held, the better it would be for the merchant house. Everyone has a teleportation station and a point trading slot in front of their seats. I believe that Dao friends already know how to trade, so I won't say much about it. The order of trading starts from the first seat. After the middle-aged scholar finished speaking, he cupped his fists and walked down before sitting down on one of the seats. Ningqing had already studied the square table in front of his seat. There was a small teleportation station on the square table, which presumably was the place to transfer items and spirit crystals. There was also a groove on the edge of the teleportation station, which could be used to place one's own task card. Then, one could use an array formation to exchange points with the traders in the distance. In addition, there was also a quotation screen, which allowed one to quote the price of the item and the item they wanted to trade. One could say that this trading platform was a very advanced thing, purely from the perspective of the trading platform. Moreover, this kind of array formation was many times more advanced than the technology used in the world of science and technology. At least, Ningqing hadn't seen any technology that could control the laws of space. If he could control the laws of space, there wouldn't be a need for logistics. The item I want to trade is a cultivation technique, the Divine Sifting Pentacauldron. You only need points or any law crystals, nothing else is accepted. A deep and resounding voice resounded in the hall. Ningqing saw that one of the seats was surrounded by a golden halo, and behind this seat was the number 1. Sitting in the first seat was a tall male cultivator. On the table in front of him was a book made of some unknown material. The book was locked by a restriction and couldn't be opened. It should be the God Sifting Pentacauldron that he was talking about. Ningqing looked at the number on his desk. It was number 664, and the color was gray. He looked at the armchair behind him and understood that when he took out the item to trade, the armchair behind him would also turn golden. Ningqing had a lot of law crystals, more than 100 of which contained the laws of space. However, he had no interest in the Divine Sifting Pentacauldron, so he naturally wouldn't bid. Although Ningqing did not bid, there were still a lot of people who bid. Ningqing saw the prices constantly refreshing on the bidding screen. At the same time, he also saw many seats in the exchange hall flashing with silver lights. Soon Ningqing found out the pattern. The silver light on the seat flashed and disappeared. It was because the price of the cultivator in that seat was pushed down by a higher price, causing a new silver light to appear on the seat with the highest price. The price changed quickly, and in just a short time, the Spirit Sifting Pentacauldron cultivation technique increased to more than 30,000 points. Finally, it stopped at 43,000 points. After reaching this point, no one else bid. The seat with the silver light flashing was number 411, a middle-aged female cultivator. From the looks of it, she was the one who bid 43,000 points. Ningqing's heart immediately stirred up. He wasn't a fool. The cultivator who took out the Spirit Sifting Pentacauldron was obviously a powerhouse who had successfully reached Dao Confirming Realm. Therefore, the things taken out by such a person naturally wouldn't be too bad, which could be seen from the competitive scene. Yet, such a good thing could be bought with just over 40,000 points. From the looks of it, his 1.5 million points were already a lot. After the price stopped changing, a crisp female cultivator's voice emerged. The highest price on the scene is 43,000 points for number 411. Would you like to trade? This exchange meeting was different from auctions. Once the highest price was announced, it depended on the cultivator who owned the item. If the cultivator who owned the item felt that the price was too low, he could choose not to trade. Deal. After the cultivator with the spirit-sifting pentacauldron finished speaking, he put the spirit-sifting pentacauldron cultivation technique into the teleportation array and placed his silver card in the groove in front of the table. As the spirit-sifting pentacauldron teleported away, the 43,000 points were transferred to the cultivator's silver card. Ning Cheng sighed in his heart. This method of trading was indeed convenient and fast. After the first transaction was completed, the seat with number 3 lit up. Ning Cheng looked at it and found that no one was sitting in the second seat. Sitting in the third seat was a female cultivator with white hair. After her seat lit up, she raised a jade box and said, "I want to trade a Dao fruit containing the laws of wood, drifting cotton fruit. I only want points." Dao fruits were divided into many types. Dao fruits containing the laws of wood mainly helped cultivators comprehend the laws of wood. This kind of law was of great use to cultivators comprehending the laws of wood spirit techniques, alchemists, and cultivators cultivating divine grasses. Of course, it didn't have much of an effect on Dao-confirming fruits. Only a few cultivators could use Dao fruits to confirm their Dao. But such cultivators were few and far between. A true Dao-confirming Dao fruit had an essential difference from an elemental Dao fruit. A Dao-confirming Dao fruit didn't just contain a law attribute, but also a kind of nomological Dao charm. Even if the drifting cotton fruit was a low-grade Dao fruit, it was still in high demand. As soon as this drifting cotton fruit came out, someone immediately snatched it up and quickly bought it for a high price of 92,000 points. From this, one could see that as long as it was related to a Dao fruit, the price would rise sharply. This made Ning Cheng very envious. No wonder law soil was so expensive. A piece of law soil could make a Dao fruit tree grow a bunch of Dao fruits. How many points could one sell it for? Following that, the people from seats 4 to 20 all took out expensive things. If it wasn't top-grade materials, it was top-grade weapons, cultivation methods, and other treasures. Even Ning Cheng fancied 7 or 8 things, but Ning Cheng didn't sell any of them. What he wanted to sell was something he needed right now, not something he could buy or not buy. Finally, it was the turn of seat 26. A pale-faced, thin man sat on this seat. He raised a jade box and said, "I also want to trade a Dao fruit, falling scar fruit." As soon as the 3 words falling scar fruit came out, it immediately caused a small stir. Falling scar fruit was a true Dao-confirming Dao fruit. Among the cultivators who came here today, more than 20% of them came here for the Dao-confirming Dao fruit. Ning Cheng also wanted this Dao fruit, but he knew that now wasn't the right time. With so many people here wanting the falling scar fruit, if he bought it, it would definitely attract attention. Maybe after this exchange meeting, someone might even track him down and kill him. He had already offended the Beyond Heaven path, so it wasn't a wise move to buy the falling scar fruit, which he didn't need urgently. Therefore, he had to use his points where it mattered most. That is, where he could improve his strength immediately. As soon as the falling scar fruit came out, the competition immediately turned white-hot. The price quickly rose to 360,000 points, and it still continued to rise. Although they were both Dao fruits, the drifting cotton fruit couldn't compare to the falling scar fruit at all. Ning Cheng saw Kong Ning with a worried look on her face. Moreover, Ning Cheng also saw her bid, which was 330,000 points. Her bid quickly fell, and the price of the falling scar fruit rose to 360,000 points. Kong Ning's face turned pale when she saw the points. The price of the falling scar fruit paused at 360,000 points for a while before Kong Ning quoted a new price, 363,000 points. When Ning Cheng saw the price and Kong Ning's expression, He understood that Kong Ning couldn't buy this Dao fruit with the points she had. Sure enough, in just a moment, the price of the falling scar fruit rose to 390,000 points. Kong Ning hesitantly looked at her senior apprentice sister Shan Yaotsun, who came with her. However, Shan Yaotsun didn't seem to notice her. Instead, she kept staring at the bidding screen as if there were flowers on it. In Yongxian, who sat not far away, also didn't seem to notice Kong Ning's pleading gaze and also looked at the bidding screen. Ning Qing felt a little speechless. Since they were fellow apprentice sisters, what was wrong with helping them? Even if they didn't want to help, they shouldn't have pretended not to know about it. Why not just say that they didn't have enough points? After Kong Ning saw the expressions of the two people, she struggled for a while before finally retracting her gaze. But she obviously didn't want to give up on the falling scar fruit and even looked at Ning Qing. To be honest, Ning Qing didn't feel that the friendship between him and Kong Ning had reached the point where she could lend her points. Kong Ning must have also realized that the relationship between her and Ning Qing hadn't reached the point where she could lend her points, especially at this kind of trade fair. Even so, Kong Ning still looked at Ning Qing, which showed how much she wanted to obtain this falling scar fruit. Ning Qing smiled at Kong Ning and sent her a voice transmission. I still have some points. Junior apprentice sister Kong Ning, I can lend you the points you owe. If I don't have enough points, I'll remind you halfway. Since Kong Ning used this kind of pleading gaze, Ning Qing naturally wouldn't pretend not to know about it like her senior apprentice sister. Even if she didn't want to lend, he wouldn't say anything. Ning Qing really couldn't play dead. As long as it didn't exceed 100,000 points, Ning Qing decided to help Kong Ning. If it was too much, he couldn't do anything about it. He came here to improve his strength, so he couldn't lend out too many points. Chapter 866. If not for her desire for this Dao fruit, Kong Ning would never have borrowed points from Ning Qing. She had been stuck at the full circle of the eternal realm for many years. As long as she had this little bit of opportunity, she was sure that she could successfully sculpt her Dao. At the very least, he could step into the ranks of half-step Dao sculpting. Kong Ning knew very well why Shan Yaotsun didn't lend her points. Not only because of the points, but also because their cultivation levels were similar. Shan Yaotsun already had a Dao fruit and was about to advance to the Dao sculpting realm. This time, she came here to look for treasures to stabilize her Dao sculpting realm. The two of them were competitors, so Shan Yaotsun naturally hoped that she would condense her Dao sculpting void later. Since In Yongxian was pursuing Shan Yaotsun, he definitely wouldn't risk Shan Yaotsun's dissatisfaction by lending her points. Now that Ning Qing agreed to lend her some points, Kong Ning felt happy. She just wanted to ask Ning Qing for help, but she didn't expect that Ning Qing would really be willing. To her, even if she owed him a favor and had to be thick-skinned, she did not want to miss this opportunity. In just a short time, the price of the falling scar fruit had already reached 410,000 points. Kong Ning hesitated before bidding 415,000 points. However, the price of the falling scar fruit quickly rose to 420,000 points. Shan Yaotsun glanced at Kong Ning with some doubts. She knew that Kong Ning definitely had less than 400,000 points. In a Dao confirming exchange like this, one simply couldn't bear the consequences of carelessly quoting a price. Ning Qing also shook his head. He felt that Kong Ning's bid did not have any momentum, which would most likely cost her more points. Only by reporting a score that made others feel that you were determined would you be able to reduce some unnecessary competition. Kong Ning also seemed to understand her shortcomings. After the price reached 420,000 points, she didn't hesitate to bid 430,000 points. In fact, although the falling scar fruit was a Dao-confirming Dao fruit, it wasn't the top-grade Dao-confirming Dao fruit. As such, the price of 400,000 points was the highest it could reach. Therefore, after 400,000 points, no one increased the bid by much. This time, Kong Ning added 10,000 points at once, showing her determination. The rising price immediately stopped at 430,000 points. After the organizer announced that Kong Ning's price was valid, Kong Ning turned her nervous gaze towards Ning Qing. In case Ning Qing could not come up with the points, then she would truly be finished. Ning Qing smiled and reached out to Kong Ning. Junior apprentice sister Kong Ning, give me your quest card. Kong Ning handed over the quest card in her hand to Ning Cheng without hesitation. It was a white card, and Ning Cheng saw that Kong Ning's quest card had 371,000 points on it. He took out his quest card and transferred 70,000 points over. With more than 440,000 points, Kong Ning could purchase this falling scar fruit. It was not a problem to pay 1% of the extra points to the merchant house. When Kong Ning saw the 441,000 points on her quest card, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. Giving a grateful smile to Ning Cheng, he then proceeded to carry out the transaction with the cultivator with seat number 26. Shan Yaotzen frowned slightly. She didn't expect that an ant-like rogue cultivator like Ning Cheng would lend tens of thousands of points to Kong Ning. This made her very unhappy. Between her and Kong Ning, whoever reached Dao confirming first would be able to enter the Spirit Techniques Pavilion first. River Luo Saints sect had a very small number of extremely powerful divine arts, but they were only taught to one disciple every 10,000 years. The spirit technique she fancied, Star Mark, happened to be a spirit technique that could only be passed on to one disciple every 10,000 years. Once Kong Ning successfully reached Dao sculpting first, she would lose this opportunity. She couldn't afford to wait for 10,000 years. Thinking of this, she even started to have murderous intent towards Ning Cheng. An ant could ruin her plans. In order to please Kong Ning, this ant probably took out all of his points. Even if he tried to please Kong Ning, with his identity, he couldn't even lick Kong Ning's toenails. How could an inner sect expert of River Luo Saints sect let an ant pursue her? While Shan Yaotzen was still thinking about her own thoughts, the cultivator in seat 27 had already reported the item he wanted to sell. The thing I want to trade is a piece of phantom wind pattern. I believe that many Dao friends already know what phantom wind pattern is. Sure enough, after the cultivator reported the item, it immediately caused some surprise discussions. It seemed that phantom wind patterns were rare. Phantom wind patterns can only condense in a wind-attributed law space, and the probability of condensing them is very small. Perhaps this thing is useless to most people, but it's the most important treasure for flight-type winged weapons. Phantom wind patterns can help a flight-type weapon evolve by a level after undergoing nirvana. This kind of thing can only be found by chance. Even if you don't have a flight-type weapon today, what about in the future? The cultivator in seat 27 had a good mouth. Even if he didn't encourage it, Ning Cheng immediately decided to buy it when he heard that it could help a flight-type weapon evolve by a level after undergoing nirvana. After the twin wings of the heavenly clouds underwent nirvana using the wind-thunder apricot tree's branch, it seemed to have reached its limit and could no longer increase its speed, which made Ning Cheng a little disappointed. As his cultivation improved, the twin wings of the heavenly clouds would eventually become useless. Now that he had a treasure to evolve it, how could he let it go? The phantom wind pattern wasn't as useless to most people as the cultivator in seat 27 said. As soon as this thing came out, the price immediately soared to 60,000 points, and it was still rising rapidly. Ning Cheng also saw Shan Yaotzen bidding, which showed that this woman also had a wing-type weapon. Ning Cheng didn't rush to bid. After the price of the phantom wind pattern reached 90,000 points, the price finally stabilized. Ning Cheng then directly quoted a price of 100,000 points. Except for a few people, most of the cultivators here didn't know Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng bid 100,000 points, and not many people cared about it. However, Shan Yaotzen knew about Ning Cheng's background. Ning Cheng was a rogue cultivator, and a rogue cultivator in the Eternal Realm. So where did he get so many points? Were points that easy to obtain? Seeing Shan Yaotzen frown, In Yongxian gritted his teeth and whispered, "Junior apprentice Sister Yaotzen, you can continue to increase the price. If you don't have enough points, I have more." Shan Yaotzen shook her head and sent a sound transmission, "Senior apprentice brothering, let's talk about it later." In Yongxian naturally didn't mind gaining Shan Yaotzen's goodwill and not having to borrow points. Ning Cheng felt satisfied when he saw that no one increased the price for the 100,000 points. He didn't care about the points at all, as long as he could obtain the phantom wind pattern. Once his twin wings of the heavenly clouds evolved by a level, it would increase his chances of survival. "Senior apprentice brother Ning, do you also want the phantom wind pattern?" Just when Ning Cheng was about to announce the start of the trade, he heard a woman's voice. Moreover, this voice didn't come from Kong Ning. Ning Cheng had just found Shan Yaotzen's voice transmission when he heard another voice transmission. Senior apprentice brother Ning. I'm Shan Yaotzen, Kong Ning's senior apprentice sister. Shan Yaotzen sent him a voice transmission? What kind of rhythm was this? He had nothing to do with this woman. This woman didn't even want to bring him into the venue, so why would she send him a voice transmission? No matter what this woman thought, Ning Cheng had no intention of paying attention to this woman. He didn't even bother to reply to the voice transmission. What does it have to do with you whether I want the phantom wind pattern or not? With senior apprentice brother Ning's talent, it would be a waste not to join the 3 sacred sections. My River Luo sacred sect is currently absorbing talents from all over the world. Let's not talk about it now. Senior apprentice brother Ning, your trade has already started. You don't have to answer me now. Let's meet at the Grand Essence Ruins restaurant after the trade fair. Ning Cheng's trade had indeed started, but no one bid higher than 100,000 points. After Ning Cheng's trade began, Shan Yaotzen also ended her voice transmission in a hurry. Ning Cheng shook his head speechlessly. Was the River Luo sacred sect that powerful? He never intended to go to any sacred sect. If he wanted to go, he would have already promised Kong Ning. Why did this woman feel so good about herself? Whether the trade started or not, Ning Cheng didn't intend to answer Shan Yaotzen's words. Seeing Ning Cheng lend points to Kong Ning, and then spend 100,000 points to buy something, even Peng Ruimei, who sat next to Ning Cheng, couldn't help but speak up. Ning Cheng, are you an inner sect disciple of a big sect? Why do I feel like you're richer than me? Ning Cheng smiled. I'm just a rogue cultivator. Peng Ruimei pursed her lips. You're a rogue cultivator. It would be strange if I believed you. As the trade continued, Ning Cheng didn't make any more moves. He thought that Shan Yaotzen would continue to send him a voice transmission to ask for his phantom wind pattern. But he didn't expect that Shan Yaotzen wouldn't send him another voice transmission. At this time, the trade reached seat number 76. A black-robed old man sat on seat 76 with a mask on his face, making it impossible for people to see his appearance. What I want to trade is a cultivation method. The black-robed old man's voice was low and slightly hoarse, as if someone had cut his throat a few times with a knife. When Ning Cheng heard that the other party wanted to trade a cultivation method, he immediately lost interest. He had the mysterious yellow formless and had no interest in cultivation methods. Although the cultivation method is somewhat incomplete, it is a top-grade spiritual consciousness spirit technique cultivation method. As soon as the black-robed old man spoke about the spiritual consciousness spirit technique cultivation method, the scene immediately turned lively again. Even Ning Cheng couldn't help but feel spirited. What he wanted most was to construct his spiritual consciousness into a spirit technique. His starry sky sea of consciousness was very powerful, and his spiritual consciousness also far surpassed others in the same realm. It would be a pity if he didn't make use of it. Unfortunately, even with the mysterious yellow formless, he hadn't made much progress in his spiritual consciousness spirit technique. At most, he could only release his spiritual consciousness to break through some restrictions that shielded spiritual consciousness and draw out a few spiritual consciousness thorns or spiritual consciousness blades. These things could help him a little against enemies when his cultivation was still low. As his cultivation improved, the strength of his opponents also grew stronger. As such low-level spiritual consciousness attacks no longer had much use. Constructing a spiritual consciousness spirit technique was not something that could be achieved with just a powerful sea of consciousness. It not only required countless years of experience, but it also required a monstrous genius brain. Ning Cheng believed that his brain was not as stupid as anyone else's and even far surpassed the average person's brain. Unfortunately, what he lacked the most was the countless years of experience. Experience was not something that could be replaced by anything. One could only explore it on their own. This kind of thing could only be accumulated over time. It was something that could only be understood and could not be expressed in words. Now that he saw a spiritual consciousness cultivation method in this place, even if it was an incomplete spiritual consciousness cultivation method, Ning Cheng did not want to miss it. The enthusiasm of the trading scene made Ning Cheng ready to make a big move. He knew that he was not the only one who desperately wanted a spiritual consciousness spirit technique, but Ning Cheng did not want to give up. Chapter 867. However, the black-robed old man's next words immediately made many cultivators who wanted to buy a spiritual consciousness cultivation method feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. I won't say the name of this cultivation method, but I won't sell it for less than 600,000 points. Spending 600,000 points to buy an incomplete cultivation technique of unknown grade was a little too risky. How many years would it take to accumulate 600,000 points? Kong Ning had saved up so many points to buy a Dao fruit, yet she still had to ask Ning Cheng to borrow it. From this, it could be seen that 600,000 points was all the savings for most people. This price doesn't even mention the name of the cultivation method. Who would want it? That's right, at least tell everyone the name of the cultivation method, right? All kinds of discussions broke out. The black-robed old man also felt that it would be inappropriate if he didn't mention the name of the cultivation method. The reason why he didn't mention the name of the cultivation method was that he was afraid that others wouldn't dare to buy it after hearing the name. Moreover, he was afraid that this cultivation method would cause a big commotion. He just wanted to collect enough points to buy the things he needed. He didn't want to cause too much trouble at all. But now that he didn't say the name, it seemed that no one would buy it. If he couldn't sell this spiritual consciousness cultivation method, he wouldn't have a chance to get the things he needed. Thinking of this, the black-robed old man spoke up again. In that case, I'll say the name of this cultivation method. This time, he still couldn't say the name of this spiritual consciousness cultivation method. He had only spoken half of his words when someone bid on the bidding screen. 600,000 points appeared on the bidding screen, making it extremely conspicuous. The black-robed old man sighed and stopped what he wanted to say. Someone stopped him from saying the name of the cultivation method. Apparently, this person didn't want the name of this cultivation method to be known by everyone. The cultivators who wanted to know the name of this mysterious spiritual consciousness spirit technique felt very disappointed. Someone also offered 600,000 points for this nameless broken divine sense divine ability cultivation method. Ning Cheng also felt a little puzzled. In fact, he was just about to bid, but he didn't expect someone to bid before him. The one who bid was seat 129, which was occupied by a man with sparse hair and a pale face. Ning Cheng could tell at a glance that this person's cultivation was much higher than that of the ninth prince. Moreover, the Dao charm flowing around his body gave off a powerful aura. This spiritual consciousness cultivation method was something that he had taken a fancy to, so even if this person's cultivation was even more formidable, Ning Cheng did not intend to let it go. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he missed it, it would never come again. He didn't hesitate to bid 610,000 points. Many people recognized the cultivator with the pale face and sparse hair. He was a genuine Dao sculpting expert. Such a powerhouse bidding 600,000 points to buy a broken spiritual consciousness cultivation method did not cause much surprise. But Ning Cheng was different. Ning Cheng looked very young, and his cultivation was only at the middle stage eternal realm. For such a cultivator to bid 610,000 was too outrageous. Since when did points become so easy to earn? Even an eternal ant could casually take out over 600,000 points? People who didn't know Ning Cheng only felt that Ning Cheng's approach was a bit abrupt, but Kong Ning, who knew Ning Cheng's roots, felt even more confused. Ning Cheng lent her 70,000 points, and then spent another 100,000 points to purchase the Phantom Wind Trace. But now he wanted to bid 610,000 points. Didn't this mean that Ning Cheng had no less than 800,000 points? But she also knew that Ning Cheng was a newcomer to the Grand Essence Ruins. Moreover, he hadn't been in the Grand Essence Ruins for more than 3 years. How could such a newcomer have so many points? Shan Yaotson's eyes lit up, but she first glanced at Kong Ning. She gave a cold snort in her heart. Kong Ning truly had some tricks up her sleeve. No wonder she treated this rogue cultivator with such politeness. It turned out that this rogue cultivator was this rich. Moreover, Kong Ning's tricks and schemes were much stronger than hers. Just by looking at how this rogue cultivator lent Kong Ning points without hesitation, she understood that Kong Ning had played with this rogue cultivator in the palm of her hand. Now that she knew that this rogue cultivator was a sheep, don't blame her, Shan Yaotzen, for sticking her foot in. Ing Yongxian frowned even more. No matter how he looked at it, Ning Qing didn't look like a rich cultivator. How could he have so many points? If Ning Qing was really this rich, how could he not even have the qualifications to come in? Yishuang, this ant who wants to talk to us is so rich. In a place not far from Ning Qing, two extremely beautiful female cultivators sat. They were none other than the 9 revolving sacred Dao Pans Shi Yishuang and Na Yuanxiang. Na Yuanxiang, who was slightly shorter, glanced at Ning Qing and spoke in a low voice. The tall Shi Yishuang frowned slightly and spoke after a while. This person is probably an inner sect disciple of a big sect. Just because he has a few points, he shamelessly swaggers around. After saying that, she glanced disdainfully at Kong Ning, who wasn't far from Ning Qing, and Shan Yaotzen, who was a little further away. As for Peng Ruimei, who sat closest to Ning Qing, she completely ignored her because of her ugly appearance. Ning Qing, how many points do you have? Peng Ruimei didn't know that she was being ignored by others. She couldn't help but ask in a low voice. I don't have many points. More than half of them are gone. Ning Qing spoke the truth. Peng Ruimei snorted. More than half of them were gone, which meant that this fellow had at least 1,000,000 points. How did he get so many points? The green-faced, thin-haired male cultivator apparently didn't expect that someone would bid against him. Moreover, the one who bid against him was an ant with eternal cultivation. His spiritual consciousness swept over Ning Qing with a cold gaze, and his imposing aura warned Ning Qing. Then he once again quoted 640,000 points. In this kind of trade fair, even if the green-faced cultivator didn't like Ning Qing, he could only give a quick warning. If he dared to oppress Ning Qing again, it wouldn't be a trivial matter. The green-faced male cultivator added 30,000 points at once, bringing the total to 640,000 points. After this price came out, the people in the trading venue didn't pay attention to the green-faced male cultivator. Instead, their gazes fell on Ning Qing. Everyone wanted to know if this rich man, who had suddenly appeared, would continue to increase the price. If he continued to increase the price, how much would he increase it? Even if he wanted to show off, Ning Qing would still increase the price. The spiritual consciousness cultivation method was closely related to his future strength. How could he shrink back? Ning Qing also understood his weakness. He only had 5,000,000 points. Compared to those old monsters who had lived in the Grand Essence ruins for countless years, he was still far behind. He couldn't compete with the other party in terms of points. Otherwise, even if he obtained this cultivation method, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. What's more, he still hadn't completed his main purpose of coming here today. His main purpose was to transform celestial essence into spirit essence. Ning Qing could also use spirit crystals to transform it, but he also wanted to see if there was anything better. In addition, he also wanted to buy a suitable long spear weapon. Only by taking out something that could tempt this black-robed cultivator. Thinking of this, Ning Qing once again quoted a new price, 650,000 points, plus 5 egg-sized time stones. Ning Qing chose time stones over space crystals because he had a wrong understanding of the value of space crystals. He believed that for cultivators who hadn't touched the laws of space, time stones were far less valuable than space crystals. However, for cultivators who had come into contact with the laws of space, spatial crystals were dispensable. Moreover, there were only a few cultivators who could touch the laws of time. Therefore, the value of time stones, which could help people touch the laws of time, would definitely be higher. The black-robed old man was a cultivator who had touched the laws of space. Therefore, for this black-robed old man, time stones should be more valuable. In fact, it was just an illusion of Ning Qing's. In any case, the value of space crystals was the same as that of time crystals. Maybe time crystals were far more valuable than space crystals, but time stones, which were far less valuable than time crystals, couldn't compare to space crystals. There were too many people who could use space to fight against enemies, but how many of them could truly comprehend the laws of space? Using spatial collapse, compression, and stretching to fight against enemies didn't mean that one could control the laws of space. However, space crystals contained a relatively clear understanding of the laws of space. How could the value of such things be lower than time stones, which only contained a few fragments of the laws of time? Even if one touched the laws of space, the value of space crystals would still be unparalleled. Whether it was a deeper understanding of the laws of space, cultivating a space-related spirit technique, arranging array formations, or crafting space-type weapons, the value of such things couldn't be compared to time stones. Although Ning Cheng had wrongly overestimated the value of time stones, the 5 time stones he took out were equally valuable. As soon as Ning Cheng's price came out, discussions broke out. Time stones, these things contain fragments of the laws of time. I heard that the perpetual moon holy emperor had the strongest control over the laws of time. Did this person find the remains of the perpetual moon holy emperor? Unfortunately, these are not laws of time crystals. Although they contain vague fragments of the laws of time, their value is still limited. All kinds of discussions broke out, and Ning Cheng even heard someone mention the name of the perpetual moon holy emperor. He felt secretly surprised. Perpetual moon holy emperor truly far surpassed a fake heavenly emperor like Chuan Xinlo. Not waiting for the blue-faced cultivator from number 129 to increase the price, the black-robed old man couldn't wait to speak up. I agree to this price. I choose to trade with Dao friend number 664. Time stones were things that could only be found by chance. Sometimes, one couldn't even buy such things with points. After Ning Cheng's bid suppressed the blue-faced cultivator from number 129, his face turned even more blue. His spiritual consciousness coldly lingered on Ning Cheng's body for a while before finally moving away. Ning Cheng guessed that this fellow wouldn't let him go, but how could he care about it at this time? Strength was king. Only by improving one's strength would one not have to look at others' faces. Otherwise, even if he gave the spiritual consciousness cultivation method to this blue-faced cultivator, no one would thank him. Time stones belonged to the category of bartering, and the merchant house wouldn't take even 1% of the price. Therefore, after Ning Cheng handed over the 5 time stones and 656,500 points, he managed to obtain the spiritual consciousness cultivation method. The spiritual consciousness cultivation method, just as the black-robed old man said, was not only broken, but also badly damaged. From the outside, it only looked like a few thin pages. Ning Cheng didn't use his spiritual consciousness to check it. Instead, he directly placed a restriction on it and threw it into his ring. Chapter 868. Ning Cheng obtained an unknown spiritual consciousness spirit technique cultivation method, causing more and more people to notice him. From time to time, someone would sweep over him with their spiritual consciousness. Peng Ruimei spoke in Ning Cheng's ear with some worry. Ning Cheng, you should not have competed for that spiritual consciousness cultivation method. The cultivator with a green face and sparse hair was called O Yindu. He had a nickname, Lifeless Poison Hand. Anyone who offended him would never be able to survive under his hands. This person had a dark and sinister heart and had killed many innocent people in the Grand Essence ruins. Yet he still lived a carefree life. He also has an absolute escape technique. Even Dao birth experts can hardly keep him here. Ning Cheng showed a noncommittal smile. If they were in the 4 grand starry skies, then he might have felt some fear. In this place, he had nothing to worry about. As long as he was full, his family would not starve. Why would he be afraid of a mere O Yendu? O Yendu would flee if he encountered a Dao birth expert, but why couldn't he? After the exchange of spiritual consciousness cultivation methods, the scene did not seem to be as enthusiastic as before. All the way to the 500th number, the transaction seemed a little dull. Although some high-priced treasures also appeared in the middle of the auction, none of them could be compared to the spiritual consciousness cultivation method, which could be exchanged for more than 600,000 points and 5 time stones. More than 100 people quickly passed by, and soon it would be Ning Cheng's turn. However, Ning Cheng had already made up his mind, so when it was his turn, he would directly skip it. Originally, Ning Cheng wanted to come up with a piece of space crystal, but after he repeatedly showed off in the limelight, he dispelled the idea. Regardless of whether the space crystal was valuable or not, he felt that he shouldn't take it out again. What he wanted to buy was a divine artifact long spear. When the time came, he could buy it at the merchant house. He didn't necessarily have to use space crystals to exchange for it. The item I want to trade is a Dao fruit tree. As the cultivator in seat 637 reported the items he wanted to trade, the trading venue, which had gradually calmed down, was once again stirred up by the words Dao fruit tree. A Dao fruit was worth hundreds of thousands of points. How much was a Dao fruit tree worth? Ning Cheng also eagerly looked at seat 637. This seat was very close to him. The person who wanted to trade the Dao fruit tree turned out to be a bald monk with a huge string of prayer beads around his neck. Although Ning Cheng's cultivation was not high, his vision was not bad. As soon as he saw this monk, he knew that this person was at least on the same level as O Yendu. Peng Ruimei, who was standing next to him, sent out a sound transmission. Ning Cheng, this monk is very powerful. Don't get involved. This person was called Ju Mei, and he had a nickname similar to O Yendu. People called him Heartless Monk. He was one of the Grand Essence Ruins 4 without. Don't look at him because he looked simple and honest. But in fact, he was ruthless and didn't have a heart. This kind of person will never be kind enough to take out the Dao fruit tree. No matter what the price is, don't bid. Sure enough, as soon as Peng Ruimei's voice reached Ning Cheng, the disturbance on the scene subsided. Apparently, many people recognized the Heartless Monk. No one would believe that the Heartless Monk would really take out a treasure like the Dao fruit tree to sell. It was just like a dog. Could you make it change its habit of eating shit? Ning Cheng was just about to ask about the Grand Essence Ruins for nothingness when he saw the Heartless Monk Ju Mei raise his hand. In the next moment, a 3-foot-tall Dao fruit tree appeared in the middle of the venue's main stage. Even someone like Ning Cheng, who had never seen a Dao fruit tree before, knew that it was a Dao fruit tree at a glance. The tree trunk also exuded a faint Dao charm, which meant that it couldn't be faked. The tree trunk also looked lush, with lush branches and leaves. The only flaw on the surface of this Dao fruit tree was that it didn't have a single Dao fruit on it. The Heartless Monk touched his head and continued to speak in a simple and honest tone. Seniors, elder brothers, this is the Heartless Monk. If it weren't for this monk, I wouldn't have sold this Dao fruit tree. As long as anyone can give me 200,000 points, this Dao fruit tree will belong to them. But because of my ignorance, even after cultivating this Dao fruit tree for a few years, I still don't know its name. I've given almost all the cultivation resources to this Dao fruit tree. If I don't sell it now, I can't even feed it myself. Today, I will put my Dao fruit tree here. I hope that a Dao friend who knows more about this Dao fruit tree can treat it well. With a simple and honest appearance, coupled with a sincere tone, almost no one doubted the Heartless Monk's words. In fact, almost no one here didn't doubt the Heartless Monk's words. Not every cultivator was like Ning Cheng, who had come to this place for less than a year. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that 200,000 points for such a Dao fruit tree was a free gift. But after this Dao fruit tree came out, no one offered a price. No one here was a fool. Because this Dao fruit tree had already absorbed all of its vitality. What remained here was just an empty shell. Don't look at the lush surface of this Dao fruit tree. It was only temporarily powered by spirit crystals. Moreover, this situation could only last for 3 days at most. After 3 days, this Dao fruit tree would wither completely. Moreover, as the Heartless Monk said, no one knew about this Dao fruit tree or what kind of Dao fruit tree it was. Although the surface of the Dao fruit tree still had a faint Dao charm, this Dao charm was no longer the Dao charm of the Dao fruit tree's core. Instead, it was the Dao charm of the Dao fruit tree that was about to dissipate. This Dao charm could be found on any Dao fruit tree. If this Dao fruit tree still had its vitality, others could still judge what kind of Dao fruit tree it was through its vitality and Dao charm. But this Dao fruit tree's vitality was about to dissipate. Even if all the major sects in the Grand Essence domain gathered to cultivate it, they wouldn't be able to keep it alive. Who would be stupid enough to buy a dying Dao fruit tree with no place to spend their points? What's more, the things the Heartless Monk wanted to exchange for weren't things that ordinary people with big hearts wouldn't dare to accept. This person had a terrible reputation and didn't care about morality or principles. Therefore, one could confirm that this Tao fruit tree didn't belong to the heartless monk himself. Instead, it was something he killed and robbed. Most likely, after this monk killed someone and snatched the Tao fruit tree, he absorbed the vitality of the Tao fruit tree, and then came here to scam others. Just when everyone thought that this Tao fruit tree was about to be auctioned, a bid of 200,000 points suddenly appeared on the bidding screen. Peng Ruimei sat next to Ning Cheng, so she naturally knew that Ning Cheng had made the bid. She sent a voice transmission to Ning Cheng with some hatred. "Why didn't you listen to me? Can you even bid for this thing?" Immediately, the cultivators in the trading venue realized that Ning Cheng had made the bid and immediately turned their gazes towards Ning Cheng. Just how many points did this unfamiliar eternal cultivator have? He had already spent 700,000 to 800,000 points before, and now he wanted to spend another 200,000 points to buy this useless and even dead Tao fruit tree? Taking a step back, even if this Tao fruit tree didn't die, could a rogue cultivator like him cultivate it? Besides, how big of a heart did one need to be to buy something from the heartless monk? Kong Ning also felt stunned. When Ning Cheng bought the spiritual consciousness cultivation method, she had already felt shocked by how Ning Cheng had so many points. But now, Ning Cheng actually wanted to spend another 200,000 points to buy something from the heartless monk. Could one buy something from the heartless monk? Whether it was real or fake, as long as it belonged to the heartless monk, no one could buy it. She couldn't care about anything else and quickly sent a voice transmission to Ning Cheng. "Senior apprentice brother Ning, you must not buy this Tao fruit tree. It's not about 200,000 points." Ning Cheng smiled, but before he could answer Kong Ning, Shan Yaotsen sent a voice transmission. "Senior apprentice brother Ning, don't buy this Tao fruit tree." Ning Cheng looked at Shan Yaotsen in surprise. Since when did this woman become so concerned about people? Shan Yaotsen had no choice but to care about Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng bought the heartless monk's Tao fruit tree, which meant that the heartless monk would most likely plot against him. Wouldn't the points bag she had been eyeing fly away in vain? Sister Yishuang, this person really is an idiot. He even dared to buy the heartless monk's things. Na Yuanxiang, who knew Ning Cheng from a distance, shook her head and spoke with some disdain. Sure, Yishuang sneered, "This is a stupid person with a lot of points. He even dares to take advantage of us. It's not a big deal for him to buy the heartless monk's Tao fruit tree." Whether this person was stupid or not, Ning Cheng still needed this Tao fruit tree. As soon as this Tao fruit tree came out, he vaguely felt that it was a thunder-attributed Tao fruit tree. He immediately connected to the everlasting blue thunder fort and felt the everlasting blue thunder fort pulsating slightly. The everlasting blue thunder fort was a thunder-attributed weapon. Therefore, it would only show a slight reaction when facing a top-grade treasure with the same attribute. Similar to the lack of spiritual consciousness spirit techniques and cultivation methods, Ning Cheng also lacked a powerful thunder-attributed spirit technique. This thunder-attributed Tao fruit tree might not bring him a thunder-attributed spirit technique, but it could help him deduce his own thunder-attributed spirit technique. Moreover, Ning Cheng's purpose wasn't just this. He was a Starry Sky Grade 9 Pill Emperor. Within the 4 Grand Starry Skies, his alchemy level could be said to be the best. Even the premier Pill Emperor Tsong Tsaiha wasn't as good as him. But after coming to the Grand Essence Realm, everyone here was a pill deity and a pill sage. In this place, as long as one couldn't refine Tao pills, even if one could use divine grasses to refine the medicinal pills needed by Tao transformation holy emperors, one could only be called a pill deity. At most, they would give one a title, Tao transformation pill deity. Only those who could refine Tao pills could be called pill sages. A Tao sculpting pill sage was far more sought after and valuable than a Tao transformation pill deity. But how many pill sages could refine Tao pills? No sect had the confidence to give a Tao fruit to an alchemist to try refining a Tao pill. Even if one became a pill sage, how many Tao fruits would one waste? Therefore, Tao pills could only be found by chance in the market. Most cultivators didn't seek Tao pills at all. Instead, they directly looked for Tao fruits. Ning Cheng's second purpose for this Tao fruit tree was to become a true pill sage. Only with this Tao fruit tree could he learn how to refine Tao pills without any scruples. Using points to buy Dao fruits to learn how to refine Dao pills? Even Ning Qing couldn't afford it. As for the fate of this Dao fruit tree, Ning Qing didn't worry about it at all. He had the mysterious yellow bead and a pile of wood origin crystals. As for law soil, he could get as much as he wanted. He didn't believe that he couldn't save this thunder-attributed Dao fruit tree. Chapter 869. Without a second bid, Ning Qing obtained the Dao fruit tree at a price of 200,000 points without any dispute. Kong Ning and Peng Ruimei could only sigh. They didn't have a good relationship with Ning Qing, and since Ning Qing didn't listen to their advice, they naturally couldn't do anything about it. After transferring out 200,000 points, a ring containing a Dao fruit tree appeared in front of Ning Qing. Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness swept out and saw the Dao fruit tree inside. He immediately took out a jade box, put the ring into the jade box, and threw it into his true spirit world. Ning Qing believed that Kong Ning and Peng Ruimei would not lie to him. Therefore, even if he bought the heartless monk's things, he had to be careful. His jade box was protected by restrictions. Therefore, after he threw the ring into the jade box, even if the heartless monk did something to the Dao fruit tree, he could go back and slowly deal with it. Whether they were cheated or looking for trouble, apart from a few cultivators who coveted Ning Qing's points, most of the cultivators no longer paid any attention to Ning Qing. The trade fair continued, but when it was Ning Qing's turn, Ning Qing directly skipped it. Until the end of the transaction, Ning Qing did not make any moves. Most people got what they wanted and left one after another. Seeing Kong Ning's appearance, Ning Qing knew what she was thinking and simply stopped her from speaking. Junior apprentice Sister Kong Ning, you can go back first. You can always return the points you owe me in the future. Kong Ning had reached the consummate level of the eternal realm. Now that she had obtained the Dao fruit, the first thing she wanted to do was to return to seclusion. The reason why he did not leave immediately was because he was worried that he would owe Ning Qing points. Many thanks, senior apprentice brother Ning. Kong Ning quickly thanked him. She indeed had the same thoughts as Ning Qing. Both of them wanted to go back to seclusion and advance to the Dao sculpting realm as soon as possible. As for the points she owed Ning Qing, she planned to return them to Ning Qing after she reached Dao sculpting. Before leaving, Kong Ning did not forget to send a sound transmission to Ning Qing, reminding him to be careful of the heartless monk. Peng Ruimei and Ning Qing greeted each other, before also hurriedly leaving. Ning Qing did not immediately leave. He had finally arrived at the Quest Merchant House's silver house. As such, he naturally wanted to go in and see if there was a spear that he needed. This was the first time that Ning Qing had come to the Quest Merchant House. As such, he had not even entered the black building on the ground floor. After arriving at the silver building, Ning Qing could not help but marvel at the things here. Talismans, divine herbs, materials, magic treasures, cultivation techniques. The cheapest spear-shaped magic treasures here only cost a few thousand points, while the most expensive ones cost hundreds of thousands of points. Not to mention a spear worth a few thousand points, even if it was worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of points, Ning Qing would not be satisfied with it. After hesitating for a while, Ning Qing left only 100,000 points in his hands and used the rest to purchase artifact crafting materials and divine grasses for alchemy. Instead of spending a high price to buy a divine spear that he was not very satisfied with, it was better to buy some materials to go back and refine it himself. Ning Qing could now craft top-grade Dao artifact long spears. Plus, his celestial river flame had already advanced to the spirit grade. It would not be impossible for him to raise his artifact crafting level to the next level. Fei Er didn't have to wait for long before Ranhausen hurried over. A moment later, Yuan Qianping also arrived. Big brother, junior apprentice Sister Qianping didn't guess wrong. That fellow really came to the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Ranhausen hadn't even taken a seat when he spoke up eagerly. When Fei Er heard this, his eyes flashed with killing intent. He then calmly waved his hand and said, "House son, remember, no matter what happens, you must remain calm. What's more, it's just an ant that could die at any time." Ranhausen nodded and sat down. He didn't think much of it in his heart. No matter what happened, he had to remain calm. Who was the one who smashed the spiritual tea table yesterday? But he wouldn't say it out loud. "Qianping, you say it." You didn't do anything. Did something happen? Fei Er sat down and said to Yuan Qianping. Yuan Qianping nodded and also sat down. Compared to Ranhausen, she truly remained calm. At least, her emotions didn't fluctuate much. This person's name is Ning Cheng. He obtained a lot of law soil in the Broken Land. Moreover, the grade of the law soil is quite high. This law soil brought him 1.5 million points. What? Even Fei Er, who tried to calm Ranhausen down, couldn't help but exclaim. He directly interrupted Yuan Qianping's words. 1.5 million points worth of law soil? Yuan Qianping spoke up cautiously. Yes, 1.5 million points worth of law soil. This matter has already been confirmed. Where did he go? Did he leave the Grand Essence Ruins public square? Fei Er had long forgotten what it meant to be calm. He had the same thoughts as most people. Since Ning Cheng could hand over 1.5 million points worth of law soil, then he definitely had more than just this amount of law soil. Yuan Qianping took a deep breath and continued. No, he didn't leave the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Instead, he went to the Grand Essence Ruins Quest House to participate in the Dao Confirming Exchange. The Dao Confirming Exchange is over, but Ning Cheng didn't leave the Quest House. I guess he's still buying things inside. I've already asked someone to keep an eye on the outside of the Quest House. Fei Er stood up eagerly and spoke up without hesitation. Let's go to the Quest House now. At this moment, he had already forgotten what he had said before about the need to remain calm. Yuan Qianping shook her head and said, Big brother, this Ning Cheng is a bit strange. He went in with Flaming Feather Spirit Mountain's sect master Peng Chiyuan's daughter, Peng Ruime. He also knows River Luo Sacred Sect's disciple, Kong Ning. He even lent Kong Ning some points during the exchange. Hearing that Ning Cheng was with Flaming Feather Spirit Mountain sect master and was also familiar with River Luo Sacred Sect's disciple, Fei Er finally calmed down. He slowly sat down again, frowned, and didn't speak. Whether it was Flaming Feather Spirit Mountain or River Luo Sacred Sect, they weren't something a small Beyond Heaven path could compete with. I feel that this person's friendship with Peng Ruime and Kong Ning is very ordinary. Yuan Qianping spoke with certainty. Fei Er's eyes lit up. Why? Yuan Qianping explained, because after the exchange, Kong Ning said that she would return Ning Cheng's points in the future and left in a hurry. She didn't invite Ning Cheng to River Luo Sacred Sect. Peng Ruime also didn't invite Ning Cheng to Flaming Feather Spirit Mountain. Even so, aren't they friends? Fei Er frowned. Yuan Qianping showed a slight smile. There are many kinds of friends. There is a kind of friend who pays attention to your news every day. There is also a kind of friend. Even if you disappear for no reason, they would only occasionally think of you after a long time. They would never investigate why you disappeared. Fei Er clapped his hands and laughed. Qianping, my Beyond Heaven path is truly fortunate to have you. If he wanted to kill Ning Cheng publicly before to establish his prestige for Beyond Heaven path, then it would be best to kill Ning Cheng secretly now. Whether it was because Ning Cheng knew Peng Ruime and Kong Ning, or because of the law soil on Ning Cheng, it wouldn't be easy to kill Ning Cheng publicly. Once he makes any moves, I can get news about him immediately. Yuan Qianping didn't care about Fei Er's words and spoke with a calm voice. It's best if he leaves the Grand Essence Ruins public square immediately, Ranhausen said with a fierce voice. Ning Cheng didn't think about leaving the Grand Essence Ruins public square immediately. However, he had already come out of the Quest Hall's merchant house. He originally wanted to buy an attack-type weapon, but he ended up buying a bunch of artifact crafting and alchemy materials instead. Next, he wanted to change his mission card and rent a cave abode. No matter who wanted to deal with him, as long as he remained in the Grand Essence Ruins public square, the other party wouldn't dare to do anything openly. This Dao friend, Monk Ju Mei greets you. Ning Cheng had just walked out of the Quest Hall's merchant house when a fat monk with a smile greeted him and gave Ning Cheng a one-handed salute. Heartless monk? Ning Cheng secretly became vigilant in his heart, but he still asked in doubt, May I ask why this master is looking for me? The heartless monk touched his bald head in a charmingly naive manner and spoke with a slightly embarrassed tone. I came here specifically to thank you. Those 200,000 points saved my life. If it weren't for this Dao friend's help, I'm afraid that I would still be in dire straits. Ning Cheng calmly replied, Master Ju Mei, you're too polite. Your Dao fruit tree only costs 200,000 points, which isn't too expensive. No, I naturally know about my tree. Because I didn't take good care of it, the vitality of that Dao fruit tree is about to collapse. This Dao fruit tree is my lifeblood, and now it belongs to Dao friend. I stayed here to wait for Dao friend because I wanted to ask Dao friend to take good care of my Dao fruit tree. Of course, I believe that since Dao friend bought this Dao fruit tree, you will definitely keep it alive. The heartless monk spoke with even more sincerity. Ning Cheng showed a slight smile. Master made a mistake. This Dao fruit tree doesn't belong to Master now, but to me. The reason why I bought this Dao fruit tree is that I like to drink tea. The smile on the heartless monk's face turned even brighter, and he repeatedly spoke up, Yes, I made a mistake. This Dao fruit tree is yours, Dao friend. But what does Dao friend buying this Dao fruit tree have to do with drinking tea? Ning Cheng showed a smile. Because I heard that using the Dao fruit tree to light a fire would make the spiritual tea more refreshing and fragrant. Plus, I have a lot of points on me, so I wanted to give it a try. If Master doesn't have anything else, then I'll take my leave. You said that you didn't buy this Dao fruit tree to save it, but to burn it and make spiritual tea? The heartless monk looked at Ning Cheng with his mouth wide open, his eyes filled with confusion. The innocent look on his face made people unable to bear to lie to him. Ning Cheng didn't seem to care that the heartless monk's cultivation was much higher than his. He patted the heartless monk's shoulder and said, Of course, you wouldn't be naive enough to think that I would save this Dao fruit tree, would you? I have a lot of points, so I like to do stupid things. Let's go. Looking at Ning Cheng's back, the heartless monk lowered his head, his eyes filled with murderous intent. A little ant dared to leave a spiritual consciousness imprint on me. What an idiot. Is that the heartless monk? How could this person be familiar with the heartless monk? Away from Ning Cheng, the blonde Fei heir asked with a frown. Even if he was the alliance master of Beyond Heaven Path, he didn't dare to underestimate the heartless monk. Yuan Qianping, who stood next to him, gave a slight bow and said, The heartless monk sold a Dao fruit tree at the trade meet, and he ended up buying it. He even dared to buy the heartless monk's things? Fei heir's eyes showed surprise. Yuan Qianping smiled. Not only did he dare to buy the heartless monk's things, but he also snatched a cultivation method from lifeless poison hand at the trade meet. No wonder he dared to kill people from my Beyond Heaven path. It turns out that he's an idiot. Fei heir muttered to himself and then sneered, Since he's an idiot, let's go. Chapter 870. Wait. Yuan Qianping stopped Fei heir. If this person wasn't so arrogant, we could have gone up now. But this person's performance shows that we're not the only ones watching him. There are many people on this public square, and many people have their eyes on him. Fei heir didn't put Ning Cheng in his eyes, which was why he wanted to go up now. Yuan Qianping's words reminded him that Ning Cheng was someone who would disappear soon. Since they weren't the only ones watching Ning Cheng, they couldn't look for him openly before Ning Cheng disappeared. Someone will keep an eye on him. We don't have to come out in person. Ranhausen said from the side. Ning Cheng naturally would not be stupid enough to place a spiritual consciousness imprint on the heartless monk. If he did so, coupled with his performance at the trade fair, it would definitely give the heartless monk a feeling that he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. It was better to let the opponent despise you than to let the opponent take you seriously. Ning Cheng had learned this trick from Duan Gantai. Duan Gantai knew how to act like an idiot the most. On the surface, Ning Cheng looked down on the heartless monk. But in fact, he had always been vigilant. Not only the heartless monk, but he also found several other people who were secretly stalking him. This didn't include people he hadn't found yet, such as lifeless poison hand. Ning Cheng didn't care about these people. He went straight to the quest hall and replaced the black card in his hand with a silver card. Since he had spent more than 1.3 million points in the quest hall, he easily exchanged them for a silver card. A silver card required one to spend 1 million points in the quest hall's merchant house. Ning Cheng's points from the exchange meeting were also counted as points for the Quest Hall's merchant house. Adding it all up, he easily exchanged for a silver card. Walking out of the Quest Hall, Ning Cheng ignored the cultivators secretly following him. He had nothing to fear. Besides, he had no intention of leaving the Grand Essence Ruins public square right now. No matter how ruthless the heartless monk and lifeless poison hand were, they wouldn't dare to openly start a fight in the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Do you know how long I've been waiting for you? A cold voice fell in Ning Cheng's ears, and Ning Cheng immediately saw Shan Yaotzen with an unhappy expression. You were waiting for me? Ning Cheng frowned and looked at Shan Yaotzen, who had stopped him. Shan Yaotzen's hands trembled in anger. She had an appointment with Ning Cheng at the Grand Essence Ruins restaurant. But even after waiting for more than an hour in the Grand Essence Ruins restaurant, she still didn't see Ning Cheng come over. In order to wait for Ning Cheng, she even sent In Yongxian away. It had always been others who fawned over her. When had it ever been her turn to spend time waiting for a rogue cultivator? And this rogue cultivator was still holding back? Seeing Ning Cheng's blank look, Shan Yaotzen suppressed the anger in her heart and tried to slow down her tone. Senior apprentice brother Ning, did you forget that I sent you a sound transmission saying that we would meet at the Grand Essence Ruins restaurant after the exchange meet? She still had something to ask of Ning Cheng, and did not want to offend Ning Cheng at this time. Ning Cheng suddenly spoke up. Yes, there is indeed such a thing. But I didn't agree to it. Could it be that someone impersonated me and promised junior sister Dan? Shan Yaotzen took a deep breath. She believed that Ning Cheng would never forget this matter. Ning Cheng didn't even bother to go to the Grand Essence Ruins restaurant. The only explanation was that he didn't take her, Shan Yaotzen, seriously. Shan Yaotzen's guess was right this time. Ning Cheng indeed didn't take her, Shan Yaotzen, seriously. Go to the Grand Essence Ruins restaurant. Do you think you can go there just because you said so? Senior apprentice brother Ning, you should know about the Grand Essence Great Meet, right? Shan Yaotzen held back her inner turmoil and tried to calm her extremely unhappy mood. Ning Cheng shook his head. I don't know about it. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Shan Yaotzen, on seeing that Ning Cheng didn't even know about the Grand Essence Great Meet, suppressed her temper and explained, do you know what the most important thing for an eternal cultivator to achieve Dao sculpting is? Finding a Dao fruit. No. That's finding a good cultivation method. Otherwise, yes, it's about finding a good opportunity. Shan Yaotzen's expression had already turned ugly. She didn't wait for Ning Cheng to guess again and took the initiative to speak up. Neither. If you come from a big sect's inner sect, you would understand that what really affects an eternal cultivator's Dao sculpting is the conversion of essence qi. A Dao sculpting cultivator's strength has a lot to do with the conversion of essence qi. Moreover, the location of the essence qi conversion, the timing, the source of the spirit qi, etc., all of which directly affect the height you can reach in the future. Of course, if you only want to reach Dao sculpting and don't care about the height you can reach after reaching Dao sculpting, then you can just ignore what I said. Ning Cheng's heart suddenly moved. He had indeed spoken nonsense before because he had no intention of talking to this woman at all. But Shan Yaotzen's words made him understand that big sects truly had some tricks up their sleeves. If he didn't put Shan Yaotzen in his eyes before, then now he understood that Shan Yaotzen's words had an effect on him. According to his original plan, he would have found a place to start converting his celestial essence into spirit essence immediately. But listening to Shan Yaotzen's words, he understood that there were still many things to pay attention to during the spirit essence conversion. The best place to convert spirit essence in the Grand Essence realm is the extraterritorial spirit spring. However, there are only a few people who can enter the extraterritorial spirit spring to convert spirit essence. The people who enter each time are the best in the Grand Essence Great Meet. If you can join a sect and participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet, you will have the opportunity to enter the extraterritorial spirit spring to remold your spirit essence. Shan Yaotzen put in a lot of effort today. After talking about the extraterritorial spirit spring, she then said to Ning Cheng, in fact, you have a lot of potential. My River Luo sacred sect lacks talented cultivators like you the most. If you want to join my River Luo sacred sect, I will do my best to help you and then let you participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. As long as Ning Cheng wanted to join the River Luo sacred sect, then her goal would be achieved. As for whether Ning Cheng would really join the River Luo sacred sect, then stop dreaming. The River Luo sacred sect wasn't a place where just anyone could enter. As for the extraterritorial divine spring, that was even more impossible. Even she, Shan Yaotsen, wasn't qualified to enter the extraterritorial spirit spring, so what about you, a rogue cultivator? Just like how Shan Yaotsen didn't sincerely invite Ning Cheng to River Luo sacred sect, Shan Yaotsen's words also fell on deaf ears to Ning Cheng. He only heard 4 words: extraterritorial divine spring. Junior Marshal Sister Dan, thank you for your reminder. I've obtained a cultivation method and want to go into seclusion for a few months. After a few months, I want to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. What do you think, Junior Marshal Sister Shan? Ning Cheng understood Shan Yaotsen's thoughts, but he had no intention of looking for Shan Yaotsen. Originally, he planned to go into seclusion to convert his spirit essence. But now that he knew that spirit essence conversion couldn't be done casually, he decided to look for some knowledge in this area and study it carefully. Shan Yaotsen felt a little disappointed when she heard Ning Cheng's words. She had hoped that her appearance and the attraction of the River Luo sacred sect would make Ning Cheng rely on her. That way, she could openly ask Ning Cheng to borrow points. Maybe she wouldn't need to borrow points, and Ning Cheng would take the initiative to give it to her. Even if Ning Cheng obtained the spiritual consciousness spirit technique cultivation method, he would give it to her. But now that Ning Cheng wanted to go into seclusion, she couldn't take Ning Cheng away by force. Thinking of this, Shan Yaotsen wanted to kick him directly. But then she thought about how she had been wronged for so long. It didn't matter if she suffered for a few more months. She would still have a chance once Ning Cheng came out of seclusion. Thinking of this, Shan Yaotsen took out her communication pearl and said, "In that case, let's exchange communication pearls. Don't worry, I'll go back to the sect and speak up for you." In the distance, the people from beyond Heaven Path stared at the intimate conversation between Shan Yaotsen and Ning Cheng. They didn't expect Ning Cheng to have a relationship with Kong Ning and even have a close relationship with River Luo sacred sect's Shan Yaotsen. After some rogue cultivators saw the relationship between Ning Cheng and Shan Yaotsen, they immediately dispelled the idea of attacking Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng smiled and exchanged communication pearls with Shan Yaotsen before heading straight to the cave rental area of the Grand Essence Ruins. With Shan Yaotsen as a shield, at least no one would come up to talk nonsense before he entered the cave rental area. There weren't many people in the cave rental area of the Grand Essence Ruins. From this, one could tell that almost all the caves here had been rented out. The cultivator in charge of the cave rental didn't even bother to raise his head when he saw Ning Cheng with his spiritual consciousness. He didn't have to worry about renting a cave in the Grand Essence Ruins. A rogue cultivator with low cultivation like Ning Cheng wasn't worthy of raising his head. Go to the periphery of the Grand Essence Ruins public square to rent out the caves here. After Ning Cheng approached, the cultivator in charge gave him a few words without raising his head. Ning Cheng threw the silver card in his hand in front of the cultivator in charge and spoke with a cold tone, "I want to rent a cave." Seeing the silver card in front of him, the cultivator immediately stood up and grabbed Ning Cheng's silver card with both hands. He then spoke with a respectful tone, "May I ask what kind of cave does this Dao friend want to rent?" A cultivator with a silver card was an important figure in the quest hall. Such a person wasn't someone a cultivator in charge of cave rental could afford to offend. "What's the price? Let's hear it." Ning Cheng's tone slowed down a bit. "The cheapest one is 1,000 points a year, and the better ones are 5,000 points or 12,000 points a year. The best one is 30,000 points a year, and the better ones." Ning Cheng interrupted the cultivator in charge, "I want a cave with 30,000 points a year." Hearing that Ning Cheng wanted to rent a cave with 30,000 points a year, the cultivator's tone turned even more respectful. How many years would it take for an ordinary cultivator to earn 30,000 points? Yet, this person used it to rent a cave for a year. It showed how rich he was. In just a short time, the cultivator in charge helped Ning Cheng with the cave rental procedures. The number plate of the Immortals Cave was B1391. Not long after Ning Cheng left with the jade card, a cultivator in black came to the cave rental place. With Ning Cheng's experience in front of him, the cultivator in charge didn't dare to speak any nonsense. The black-robed cultivator didn't rent a cave abode. Instead, he threw out a storage bag and said in an extremely hoarse voice, "There are 5,000 spirit crystals inside. Tell me, which cave abode did the person in front rent?" The cultivator in charge naturally wouldn't help Ning Cheng hide it. He put away the spirit crystals without hesitation and told the black-robed cultivator about Ning Cheng's cave. Chapter 871. The 30,000-point cave abode was indeed extraordinarily good. Not only was the god's spiritual energy incomparably dense, but the environment of the cave abode was also magnificent. Ning Cheng wasn't in the mood to observe the scenery here. After activating the cave's restrictions with the cave's jade card, he immediately entered the cave and took out the ring containing the Dao fruit tree. In less than a day, this Dao fruit tree's branches had already turned yellow. The Dao fruit tree's vitality was even thinner, and one could barely feel any aura of life from it. Ning Cheng didn't immediately transplant the Dao fruit tree into the true spirit world and use the law soil to cultivate it. Instead, he placed his hands on the Dao fruit tree and immersed himself in it. Although Ning Cheng's cultivation was still at the middle stage eternal realm, his spiritual consciousness was so strong that it didn't lose out to ordinary Dao sculpting cultivators. As for the strength of his sea of consciousness, it was not something a Dao sculpting cultivator could compare to. How many people had a starry sky sea of consciousness? Even the most top-grade cultivation method would not be able to open up a starry sky sea of consciousness. Circulating his spiritual consciousness continuously, Ning Cheng carefully searched every corner of the Dao fruit tree. Even if Ning Cheng's sea of consciousness grew stronger, after a while, his face turned pale and covered in sweat. After an hour, Ning Cheng finally gave out a sigh, and his spiritual consciousness finally locked onto the bottom of this Dao fruit tree's tree core. Not only was there an extremely concealed spiritual consciousness mark here, but this spiritual consciousness mark was also covered by an extremely small concealment restriction. With this kind of concealment effect, even Dao sculpting cultivators who were not proficient in the array Dao might not necessarily be able to find it. Although Ning Cheng's cultivation was weak, he had his own advantages. Not only was his spiritual consciousness powerful, but he was also an array Dao master. In the Grand Essence realm, Ning Cheng's array formations had already reached the level of a low-level spirit array master. With Ning Cheng's current strength, it was only a matter of time before he found the spiritual consciousness imprint left behind by the heartless monk. Ning Cheng could easily burn away this spiritual consciousness imprint with his celestial river flame. However, Ning Cheng did not do so. Instead, he peeled off the spiritual consciousness imprint left behind by the heartless monk from the Dao fruit tree. Then he took out an ordinary tree and poured it into it. After finishing these, Ning Cheng did not stop. He began to refine the array flags. After another 2 hours, after arranging everything properly, Ning Cheng put on the appearance-changing mask and quietly left the immortal cave where he was located. He went straight to the quest hall and applied for a new black quest card. The cultivator in charge of renting the cave felt quite satisfied today. Although Ning Cheng scared him once, he still received 5,000 spirit crystals as compensation. 5,000 divinity crystals was not a small amount to him. "Are there any cave residences for rent?" A hoarse voice alerted the cultivator in charge of renting the cave. When he raised his head, he found that a man in embroidered robes had appeared in front of him. Without waiting for the cultivator in charge to say that there was no cave to rent, the man in embroidered robes took a few deep breaths, took out a storage bag and threw it to the cultivator in charge of renting the cave. Then with a slightly hoarse voice, he said, "Quickly help me find a cave. These are yours. I need to rest." At a glance, an expert could tell that there was something wrong with the cultivation method of this man in embroidered robes. The cultivator in charge wanted to say that there was no immortal cave, but after seeing the storage bag, he immediately swept it with his spiritual consciousness. When he saw the 10,000 spirit crystals in the storage bag, he did not hesitate to roll up the storage bag and said, "There's also a cave abode. May I ask what kind of cave abode Dao friend needs?" The man in embroidered robes gave a sound and said, "The cave I rented last time was worth 12,000 points per year. This time, I'll rent it again." After saying that, the man in embroidered robes handed out a black point card. When the cultivator in charge saw the man take out 10,000 spirit crystals as a tip and wanted to rent a cave abode worth 12,000 points, he immediately thought that this man had an extraordinary background. He didn't expect that this man would just take out a black card. But since he had already received a tip of 10,000 spirit crystals, he didn't care about anything else. The cultivator in charge quickly helped the man in embroidered robes complete the formalities and sent him away. Cultivator caves in the Grand Essence Ruins public square generally had warning array formations and restrictions. As long as a cultivator wasn't an idiot, he or she could use the array formations to issue a warning if an enemy invaded. Therefore, the cultivator caves here were basically safe. Of course, this kind of safety was only basic. If you met a cultivator with a much higher cultivation than you, the moment you issued a warning, that person would have already rushed into the cave and killed you. Even if your warning attracted the cultivators in charge of security, the person who started the attack would have already left. If the person killed was someone important, the Grand Essence Ruins might even send someone to investigate and intercept the intruder. If the person who was killed was just an insignificant person, the investigation would only last for a period of time at most, and then it would be over. It wasn't that such a thing didn't happen before. It had once happened in the Grand Essence Ruins public square cave abode. Ning Cheng rented the cave abode for 30,000 points a year. It was a medium-grade cave abode within the B grade. Therefore, the security facilities here were naturally much higher compared to ordinary caves. Cultivators who came to live here would usually arrange some defensive restrictions and warning restrictions to make it safer. Of course, if one rented an A-grade cave, it would be almost foolproof. Even if the cultivator didn't arrange any restrictions, he or she would still receive the protection of the Strangulation Grand Array after moving in. Once someone invaded, it would trigger the Strangulation Grand Array. At this moment, a small bird landed on the tree outside Ning Cheng's cave abode's restrictions. A moment later, a black-robed cultivator suddenly appeared next to the bird. This black-robed cultivator had completely converged his aura and didn't show even the slightest fluctuation. If the cultivator responsible for renting the cave abode was here, he would have recognized this black-robed cultivator as the one who asked about Ning Cheng's cave abode. After half an incense stick worth of time, the black-robed cultivator's spiritual consciousness slowly swept out. A moment later, a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Sure enough, it was almost the same as what he expected. The price of the cave abode wasn't low, but the cave abode's defensive restrictions weren't even properly used. In other words, he could kill this ant before the cave abode's warning system was triggered. Then he could walk away with this ant's ring. After confirming that there was no mistake, the black-robed cultivator carefully walked into the restrictions and raised his hand to throw out some array flags. A moment later, his figure disappeared from the cave abode's restrictions. It was as if he had integrated into the space around him. He couldn't even produce a single fluctuation, let alone trigger the restrictions. After the black-robed cultivator entered the cave abode's restrictions, he immediately felt an extreme sense of danger. Did he discover him? Just when he wanted to force his way in, a deep voice arrived. "Oh Yendu, this monk expected you to come. You really came, It's you? Heartless monk." The black-robed male cultivator immediately recognized the owner of this deep voice. Sure enough, after he finished speaking, a fat monk suddenly appeared in front of him. It was the heartless monk Jumei. This monk had silently sneaked into Ning Cheng's cave abode without even changing his appearance. "What do you want?" The black-robed Yendu spoke with a hoarse voice, but he immediately realized that his words were nonsense. Sure enough, the heartless monk showed a simple and honest smile. "Dao friend lifeless, what can I do? This kid's vigilance is so poor that we can make a fortune from it. How about this? Let's divide this kid's things equally. The Dao fruit tree is mine, and I want to take it back. That spiritual consciousness cultivation method is mine. Oyendu spoke with a deep voice. The heartless monk made a no-problem gesture and whispered, "In that case, let's sign a contract." A contract was an agreement that bound one's essence spirit. Generally speaking, few people would go back on their words. Since the heartless monk said to sign a contract, Oyendu naturally had no problem with it. But he still whispered, "It seems a bit too easy to come in. Could it be a trap?" The heartless monk sneered, "Trick my ass. You don't know how stupid this kid is. He even tried to place a spiritual consciousness imprint on me during the day. Have you ever seen such an idiotic ant?" Hearing that Ning Cheng wanted to place a spiritual consciousness imprint on the heartless monk, Oyendu felt completely relieved. He nodded to the heartless monk and said, "You're good at stealth. You go in front. I'll prevent him from escaping." After the two quickly reached an agreement, they quickly arrived at the entrance of Ning Cheng's secluded cave. Ning Cheng's vague shadow appeared between the two people's spiritual consciousness, and there seemed to be some faint fluctuations in his aura. This kid dares to go into seclusion at such a deep level. I'll break open the cave abode. Let's finish him off in the shortest time possible and then meet up in the Grand Essence ruins. The heartless monk felt his spiritual consciousness imprint and the fluctuations in Ning Cheng's aura. He then stretched out his tongue and licked his lips. The two of them almost did not have to spend any effort to break into Ning Cheng's immortal cave without any danger. Oyendu immediately reached out and grabbed Ning Cheng. But as soon as his hand reached out, he spoke up anxiously, "No, it's not him." Obviously it wasn't Ning Cheng. The one in seclusion here was just a weapon substitute. Ning Cheng had left his aura fluctuations on the substitute, which fooled Lifeless Poison Hand and the Heartless Monk. Even without Oyendu's reminder, the Heartless Monk realized that he had been deceived the moment he stepped into Ning Cheng's cave abode. He immediately turned around and left without even taking a break. Unfortunately, this was all within Ning Cheng's calculations. The Heartless Monk had just turned around when a violent explosion erupted in the cave abode, and a murderous light suddenly filled the entire cave abode. The cave abode's restrictions, which Lifeless Poison Hand and the Heartless Monk could easily enter before, suddenly became 10 times more complicated. Entrapment arrays and strangulation arrays suddenly appeared, and the whimpering sound of blade lights filled the entire Grand Essence Ruins public square. Even an idiot would realize that someone had launched a sneak attack on a cultivator's cave in the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Moreover, it was a B-grade cultivator's cave. Powerful lights quickly rushed over, causing the Heartless Monk and Lifeless Poison Hand to burn with anxiety. It was just that the cave abode's restrictions, which they could easily break through previously, had suddenly turned into a variety of entrapment and strangulation arrays. But no matter how anxious the two were, they couldn't escape in the shortest time. Chapter 872. By the time the Heartless Monk and Lifeless Poison Hand smashed Ning Cheng's entrapment and killing arrays to pieces, the escaping lights had already arrived in front of them. After the Heartless Monk cursed a few times, he raised his hand and threw out a talisman. The talisman rolled up a bunch of lights and instantly swept away the Heartless Monk. Lifeless Poison Hand could only curse angrily when he saw Heartless Monk leaving. His body glowed with a red radiance, and he turned into a streak of red light before the fleeing lights could catch up to him. Compared to the Heartless Monk, he paid a greater price. He did not obtain the spiritual sense cultivation method, and in order to activate the escape technique, he had to burn his essence blood. Half a day later, the Heartless Monk landed in the depths of the Grand Essence Ruins. He looked back at the Grand Essence Ruins in the distance and took out a jade box full of vitality. After looking at it, he immediately cursed. At this moment, he no longer looked simple and honest. The ferocious expression on his face seemed to want to swallow everything. In just a few more days, even if he brought back the Dao fruit tree, he wouldn't be able to resurrect it. The reason why he had extracted the vitality of the Dao fruit tree was because he was afraid that it would be bought by a powerhouse and he wouldn't be able to get it back. Of course, if a powerhouse really took action, he would also leave a spiritual consciousness imprint on the Dao fruit tree. If this powerhouse managed to raise the Dao fruit tree, he could go and dig it away at any time. If the imprint was discovered, he wouldn't lose anything. Not only was his Dao fruit tree bought by an ant, but he was also tricked by this ant because of a moment of carelessness. How many years has he been in the Grand Essence ruins? How could he take such a loss? If he, the heartless monk, didn't swallow this ant alive, then he would have lived in the Grand Essence ruins for nothing. Two unidentified cultivators failed in their sneak attack on a cave in the Grand Essence ruins public square and ended up escaping. News of that incident quickly spread throughout the Grand Essence ruins public square. The classic version was that these two unidentified cultivators triggered the restrictions of the Grand Essence ruins public square when they attacked the Grand Essence ruins public square cave. As a result, the cultivators guarding the Grand Essence Public Square's cave immediately rushed to the scene and severely injured the two. If these two didn't have top-grade escape talismans, they would have already died in the Grand Essence Ruins cave. No matter how widespread the classic version was, there were still people who spread the real version. In fact, a cultivator named Ning Cheng had offended Lifeless Poison Hand because he acted too recklessly during the Dao confirming exchange meeting. Moreover, this cultivator was bold enough to buy the Heartless Monk's Dao fruit tree. Provoking two powerful people in a row would naturally lead to a sneak attack on his immortal cave. Although no one said that it was Lifeless Poison Hand and the Heartless Monk who attacked the cave, everyone guessed that these two were the ones who launched the sneak attack. Don't look at the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's propaganda about how powerful their guards were. The one who truly died was Ning Cheng, who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. As for Lifeless Poison Hand and Heartless Monk, they had only wasted a talisman. After a while, he would still come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square. News of Lifeless Poison Hand and Heartless Monk teaming up to kill Ning Cheng in the cave quickly spread out. Most likely, except for Lifeless Poison Hand and the Heartless Monk, everyone else thought that Ning Cheng had died. Shan Yaotzen, who remained in the Grand Essence Ruins public square, sighed speechlessly when she heard the news. She should have known that people like Ning Cheng wouldn't live for long. It was truly a waste of her efforts. He deserved to die. Apart from Shan Yaotzen, only Kong Ning and Peng Ruimei knew about Ning Cheng. But the two of them had already returned to their sects in the Grand Essence domain. Therefore, they didn't hear the news in time. In the end, when they heard the rumors, they could only sigh. They couldn't change anything. Ning Cheng's death was like a speck of dust falling into a boundless lake. It couldn't even cause a ripple. However, the news of Ning Cheng handing over the Law Soil task in the quest hall and obtaining 1.5 million points quickly spread out. In the Grand Essence realm, apart from the Grand Essence ruins, almost all the major sects were concentrated in the Grand Essence domain. Moreover, the Grand Essence Sea was also a part of the Grand Essence domain. No one dared to ignore the Grand Essence Sea. It wasn't just because the Grand Essence Sea had 4 major sects, but more importantly, it had a Dao Perfection powerhouse. The Grand Essence Sea's premier sea sect was a clan rather than a sect. This clan was the Grand Essence Barbarian Dragon Clan. The Grand Essence Sea's premier powerhouse, Mansiyan, was from the Grand Essence Barbarian Dragon Clan. At the same time, Mansiyan was also a Dao Perfection powerhouse. However, Mansiyan never showed up, and almost no one had ever seen his real body. The current ruler of the Grand Essence Barbarian Dragon Clan was Dragon Emperor Man Huishan. Although he lived in the sea, he had the name of a mountain. Man Huishan was not only the Dragon Emperor of the Grand Essence Barbarian Dragon Clan but also the second strongest expert in the Grand Essence Barbarian Dragon Clan after Man Sutin. Rumor had it that he had reached the full circle of Dao Essence and was only one step away from reaching Dao confirming Dao Fusion. The difference in strength between Primordial Dao and Dao integration experts was too great. It's just that there were only 2 or 3 Dao Perfection powerhouses in the entire Grand Essence realm. Even if you added in the hidden ones, there wouldn't be more than a handful of them. The Grand Essence Barbarian Dragon Clan's Imperial Palace was one of the most luxurious places in the entire Grand Essence domain. The Dragon Emperor's Imperial Palace was located in the deepest part of the Grand Essence Sea, where the spiritual qi was the densest. Countless beautiful corals and crystals could only pave the periphery of the Imperial Palace. In addition, All kinds of spiritual trees surrounded the entire imperial palace. The blue seawater on the seabed flowed around the periphery of the imperial palace, but not a single drop of water would seep into the imperial palace. If an ordinary person came here, they would think that they had entered a fairy tale world. In fact, the barbarian dragon clan's imperial palace wasn't just a fairy tale world, but a cruel place. Any cultivator or sea race that offended the imperial palace would be strangled and thrown into the sea without any reason. Any cultivator who wanted to visit the imperial palace had to get permission first. After getting permission, they would have to pass through layers of guards to reach the entrance of the imperial palace. At this time, in the magnificent and luxurious imperial palace, a middle-aged man wearing an imperial crown sat on a chair in the middle of the imperial palace. Not far from him, more than a dozen male and female cultivators stood on both sides. Even further away from his seat, there were several dozen men and women standing on both sides. The palace was very quiet, and the middle-aged man wearing the imperial crown had a gloomy expression on his face. In the middle of the empty hall, a young man knelt down. After half an incense stick worth of time, the middle-aged man wearing the imperial crown spoke up in a low voice. "Manjurin, you're a half-step Dao sculpting expert. Yet you went to a low-level positional plane and got your body smashed to pieces. Yet you still have the face to come back? It's my man Huaishan's shame to have a useless evil creature like you. Royal Father, that kid has a terrifying arrow. I suspect that it's the 5-colored star splitter arrow." The young man quickly spoke up with respect. This person was obviously Manjurin, who had his body smashed to pieces by Pan Qian. Moreover, he hated Ning Cheng more than Pan Qian. If Ning Cheng hadn't rescued Pan Qian, and if Ning Cheng hadn't come to the mysterious Yellow Starland, he would have already succeeded. The reason why Manjurin didn't mention Pan Qian, apart from his hatred for Ning Cheng, was that he didn't want to leak the news about Pan Qian. Pan Qian contained the purest ancient bloodline. If he leaked the news about Pan Qian, he feared that Pan Qian's bloodline would have nothing to do with him. Manjurin believed that now that his body had recovered, as long as he worked hard to cultivate, it wouldn't take long for him to catch that giant 5-colored star splitter arrow? Man Huishan, wearing the imperial crown, repeated in surprise. Manjurin spoke up with even more certainty. "Royal Father, I didn't see it wrong. That arrow is most likely the 5-colored star splitter arrow. It doesn't have a bow or an arrow, but when it's activated, it's colorful and has a terrifying power that can destroy everything. Ninth brother, don't lie in front of Royal Father. If it really was the 5-colored star splitter arrow, do you think your essence spirit could come back? Even if you belong to my barbarian dragon clan, you can't come back." A purple-faced man standing a little further down the imperial palace steps couldn't help but scold him. Manjurin quickly spoke up. "Second brother, how could I dare to lie in front of Royal Father? That fellow couldn't fully activate the 5-colored star splitter arrow. At most, he could only activate less than 1/10,000th of it. What he shot out wasn't an arrow, but the killing power on the arrow. I'm afraid that even he didn't know about it. Otherwise, how could I have the chance to speak here?" The purple-faced man, who Manjurin referred to as second brother, asked again, "What's that person's cultivation?" Manjurin understood what his second brother meant. He hesitated for a while but still spoke the truth. He should be in the eternal realm, but definitely not at the late-stage eternal realm. A cultivator who hasn't even reached the late-stage eternal realm can shoot the 5-colored star splitter arrow. The purple-faced man frowned. Manjurin saw his royal father's expression turn ugly on the emperor's throne. He quickly explained, "That person's strength might look poor, but if he burns his essence, blood and lifespan, he doesn't look any weaker than me." He wanted to find a few people to prove it, but none of his followers came back. "What's his name?" Man Huishan, sitting on the emperor's throne, stopped the purple-faced man from asking any more questions and asked personally. "His name is Ning Cheng." As soon as Manjurin's words came out, some surprised voices came from the Dragon Palace. Then an old man in brown robes stood up and bowed to the middle-aged man on the emperor's throne before saying, "Dragon Emperor, I know this Ning Cheng. Not long ago, this person appeared on the Grand Essence Ruins public square, and he obtained 5 fist-sized clumps of law soil. Wait, you said he obtained 5 fist-sized clumps of law soil? Dragon Emperor Man Huishan interrupted the brown-robed old man's words after hearing those words. The brown-robed old man spoke up in a respectful tone. Indeed, this person not only obtained 5 clumps of law soil, but the quality of these clumps of law soil also looks extremely beautiful. The Grand Essence Ruins Quest Hall took out such a clump of law soil and sold it for a very high price. But I don't know if this Ning Cheng I'm talking about is the 1/9 prince mentioned. After speaking, the brown-robed old man raised his hand and drew out Ning Cheng's appearance. After Manjurin saw Ning Cheng's appearance, he immediately pointed at him and said, "It's him, it's this guy." "Where is he?" Man Huishan suppressed his excited tone and asked in a deep voice. His emperor palace lacked law soil. As long as he had enough law soil, he was confident that he could cultivate a Dao fruit and pave the way for him to reach Dao-confirming realm. The brown-robed old man bowed again and said, after this person exchanged for 1.5 million points, he didn't know when to advance or retreat. He offended Lifeless Poison Hand and Heartless Monk at the Quest Hall's Dao-confirming exchange. Later, I heard that these two killed him in a sneak attack while he was in seclusion in his cave. Immediately bring Lifeless Poison Hand and Heartless Monk here. Man Huishan gave a snort and said without hesitation. It seemed that Lifeless Poison Hand and Heartless Monk, who were famous throughout the Grand Essence Ruins, were just ants in his eyes. Chapter 873. Ning Cheng naturally didn't know that Manjurin had not only escaped back to the Grand Essence Sea but also restored his corporeal body. He disguised himself as a man in embroidered robes and rented a new cave abode. After rearranging the cave abode's restrictions, he entered the quintessential world. Ning Cheng then transplanted the withering Dao fruit tree into the true spirit world. Ning Cheng not only placed more than 100,000 spirit crystals under the Dao fruit tree but also left several pieces of law soil under it. After entrusting Chasing Bull to look after the Dao fruit tree, Ning Cheng came out of the true spirit world and took out the incomplete spiritual consciousness cultivation method he obtained from the exchange meet. Carefully opening the restrictions on this broken cultivation method, Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness seeped in. A moment later, a series of messages appeared in Ning Cheng's memories. The Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll, the number 1 spiritual will cultivation technique under the Chaos Realm. The opening sentence startled Ning Cheng. What was this Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll? He actually dared to say that it was the number 1 spiritual will cultivation technique beneath the primal chaos. The creation of this cultivation method was inspired by the North Sea. The North Sea came out of the Kuan, and it was thousands of miles wide. Even after transforming into a pung, who knows how many thousands of miles it will cover? Everyone knew that the rock was huge and could fly millions of miles. However, few people knew that when the rock opened its mouth, it could swallow more than a few thousand miles. Spiritual will is an intangible thing, and the rock can swallow the heaven and earth. How can an intangible spiritual will be inferior to the rock of the northern underworld? A certain darkness devours gods, devours the divine will of heaven and earth, devours the sea of consciousness of all living beings, and devours all things incorporeal. However, the sun waxes and wanes, and the moon waxes and wanes. No matter how strong the technique was, it would still have its flaws. If one sea of consciousness was not strong, there was no benefit in cultivating it, and it would explode after a long time. Even if one sea of consciousness is strong, he can only devour the sea of consciousness of other cultivators. He can't last long. I am very regretful. The ignorant and foolish see the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll as the world's most vicious. It's a pity that I can't devour all the ignorant and foolish people. After a while, Ning Cheng finally put down this incomplete cultivation method, and was secretly shocked in his heart. He was sure that the person who created this Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll was a paranoid person who viewed the lives of others as ants. This Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll was simply a transformation technique, grand technique, or a star-sucking cultivation method. However, unlike the transformation technique grand technique, the former devoured internal force, while the dark nether devouring spirit scroll devoured the cultivator's spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness. Others said that this cultivation method was vicious, but it wasn't wrong. This cultivation method was indeed vicious. Think about it, others had painstakingly cultivated for countless years, only to have their spiritual sense devoured in a single exchange with you, and even their sea of consciousness was destroyed. It would be strange if anyone liked this kind of cultivation method. Moreover, this dark nether devouring spirit scroll had flaws, just like the great art of transformation. Swallowing too much spiritual sense would cause one's sea of consciousness to explode. If this problem was not solved, no matter how powerful this cultivation technique was, no one would dare to cultivate it. No wonder someone would sell this cultivation technique after obtaining it. Ordinary people really wouldn't dare to cultivate this kind of thing. To be honest, Ning Cheng did not have a favorable impression of the great art of transforming cultivation. Even though the creator of this technique gave it a nice-sounding name of the Dark North Divine Technique, the principle was the same. Through the method of parasitism, it absorbed the internal energy of others. Judging from the cultivation method of this cultivation method, the cultivator who created this cultivation method was indeed a genius among geniuses. But to say that it was the #1 spiritual sense cultivation method under the primal chaos realm, Ning Cheng didn't think much of it. Maybe the person who created this cultivation method eventually died because of this cultivation method. Because he swallowed too much spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness, he ended up exploding his own sea of consciousness. But in any case, Ning Cheng admired the theory of this cultivation method. Swallowing the spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness of a cultivator, Ning Cheng disdained to do it. This cultivation method violated the moral bottom line in Ning Cheng's heart. However, Ning Cheng saw many attacking methods from this cultivation method, some of which even contained great spirit techniques. Moreover, Ning Cheng also felt very interested in the other theories of this cultivation method. Although the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll mainly talked about swallowing the spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness of a cultivator, but it proposed to swallow the spiritual sense of heaven and earth, to swallow all invisible things. Both were methods to increase one's spiritual consciousness, which made Ning Cheng very interested. This meant that this cultivation method could increase one's spiritual consciousness by swallowing some spiritual fruits and spiritual grasses that had an effect on one's spiritual consciousness. One could also strengthen one's spiritual consciousness by swallowing all the invisible and invisible thoughts in the universe. This kind of invisible and invisible thoughts included the thoughts released by various treasures, as well as some mind power that automatically formed in the starry sky. This was similar to absorbing spiritual chi for cultivation, which was equivalent to opening up another way to cultivate one's spiritual consciousness. It was no longer the same as absorbing starry sky spiritual chi to advance one's spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness. Instead, it was through spiritual consciousness cultivation, which allowed one's spiritual consciousness to advance on its own. Ning Cheng decided to use his own deductions and combine them with the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll to evolve his own spiritual consciousness attacks. It would be best if he could create a new cultivation method for spiritual consciousness cultivation. Because the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll was incomplete, it only had the first 4 levels. The first level was spiritual consciousness transformation, the second level was sea of consciousness mutation, the third level was starry sky sea of consciousness, and the fourth level was sea of consciousness formless. Ning Cheng's sea of consciousness had already transformed into a starry skies sea of consciousness. Ning Cheng didn't know if his sea of consciousness had mutated or not. However, he knew that his sea of consciousness had evolved into a starry sky sea of consciousness after going through the nirvana thunder tribulation. As for the sea of consciousness becoming formless, it was a sign that the starry sky sea of consciousness had advanced once again. Once the sea of consciousness became formless, even if one didn't use a spiritual consciousness cultivation method, one could still transform it into a world when fighting against an enemy. At that time, the enemy could walk into the sea of consciousness and be slaughtered by you. Ning Cheng didn't care about the sea of consciousness becoming formless. A real powerhouse wouldn't walk into the other party's sea of consciousness. As for ordinary opponents, Ning Cheng didn't need to let the other party walk into his sea of consciousness. What he cared about was that once the sea of consciousness became formless, his sea of consciousness would increase by leaps and bounds. It would even form a faint connection with the surrounding starry sky, which was the true meaning of formless. However, Ning Cheng felt very interested in the several spiritual consciousness spirit techniques within the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll. Spiritual Consciousness Chop. This was a spirit technique that could directly attack the other party's sea of consciousness when fighting against an enemy. This was completely different from when he used spiritual consciousness thorns and spiritual consciousness blades to sneak attack the other party's sea of consciousness. This was an open and above-board attack on the other party's sea of consciousness, which could not be resisted. The spiritual consciousness chop turned into continuous mountain-shaped blade lights, which could cut through several or even dozens of spiritual consciousness blade lights. The specific number of spiritual consciousness blade lights that could be cut out depended on the strength of the opponent and the degree of control over the spiritual consciousness chop. Dark Consciousness Storm. This was a spiritual consciousness spirit technique that combined the laws of space. This spirit technique required one to control the laws of space and combine one's spiritual consciousness with the laws of space to attack the opponent. However, this wasn't an attack on the other party's sea of consciousness, but a physical attack. In this dark consciousness storm, the opponent's spiritual consciousness would be suppressed and directly sucked into the spiritual consciousness storm space. Ning Cheng rented a cave in the Grand Essence Ruins public square for a year. However, he didn't go into secluded cultivation, nor did he rush to transform his spirit essence. After mastering the spiritual consciousness chop and dark consciousness storm, Ning Cheng began to learn artifact crafting. He already had a lot of materials on him, plus the materials he bought with points. Even if he continued to craft artifacts for a year or two, he would have more than enough materials. As for alchemy, he would only refine a few furnaces of medicinal pills when crafting artifacts got boring. In the Grand Essence Ruins quest hall, a white-robed woman stared at one of the big quest screens with red eyes. She had been standing there staring for nearly an hour without moving an inch. This was a wanted mission screen, and there was a very eye-catching mission on it. Capture lifeless poison hand O Yindu, reward 2 million points. The reward for capturing the heartless monk Ju Mei was also 2 million points. Capture heartless monk Ju Mei, reward 2 million points. But the premise was that they had to be alive. One could say that the reward for this quest was almost comparable to the Grand Essence Spirit Thunder quest. However, many people knew that they could only look at this quest. If they really wanted to catch these two notorious people, they would have to die. Fortunately, the reward for providing information about this quest was 500,000 points, which was just too generous. Almost everyone thought that this quest must have come from the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's cave. After all, these two people had attacked the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's cave before. Because of this, the reputation of the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's cave didn't decline. Instead, it rose to a whole new level. Many cultivators' confidence in the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's cave rose again because of this quest. For a time, the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's cave couldn't even be rented with a silver card. Rushue, how come you're here? I was just about to go back and bring you here. A clear and pleasant voice rang out beside the white-robed woman. The white-robed woman looked back and saw an equally pretty female cultivator in blue robes. Her eyes flashed with surprise and she called out, Yenji. But then her eyes dimmed, and she even lowered her head. Yenji had just returned from a mission in the Grand Essence Ruins. She originally planned to go to the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City and bring Nalan Rushua. But now that she saw Nalan Rushua here, she naturally felt happy. But when she saw Nalan Rushua's expression, she understood what happened and quickly asked, What happened? Let's go somewhere else. After Nalan Rushue finished speaking, she walked out of the quest hall first. In a rest stop in the Grand Essence Ruins, Yenji's face turned pale as she listened to Nalan Rushue's words. Her entire body trembled. She had excellent qualifications and was the kind of person who cultivated hard. Coupled with the opportunities she encountered in the Grand Essence ruins, she advanced from the heaven-seated realm to the life and death realm in just a few years. According to her original plan, she would bring Nalan Rushue from the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City to the Grand Essence ruins. Then, the two of them would do the quest together. Once her cultivation advanced to the Eternal Realm, her attainments in the Tao of Arrays would also improve. At that time, she could perfect the teleportation array under the Grand Essence Sea and teleport back to find Ning Cheng. But she never expected to hear the bad news about Ning Cheng from Nalan Rushue's mouth. Ning Cheng also went to the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City to find her. In the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City, Ning Cheng took Nalan Rushue to the Grand Essence ruins. But when he went into seclusion in the Grand Essence ruins public square cave, lifeless Poison Hand and heartless Monk joined forces and killed him. The Grand Essence ruins public square cave had issued a high reward for the two people who attacked the cave. But unfortunately, they hadn't even seen the shadow of the two. Seeing Yenji's pale face and trembling body, Nalan Rushue suddenly felt a little lost. Compared to Yenji's feelings for Ning Cheng, her feelings for Ning Cheng didn't seem to be pure. Chapter 874. Rushue, I'm leaving. Yenji stood up. Although her face was still pale, her tone seemed to have calmed down. Nalan Rushue also stood up. She had been with Yenji for a long time and knew her very well. Yenji had an independent personality and was very assertive. From a certain point of view, Yenji was much stronger and more independent than her. Even if she had lived alone in the starry sky for many years, she still couldn't compare to Yenji. She also knew that Yenji had decided to kill lifeless Poison Hand and heartless Monk. However, she didn't try to persuade Yenji. She knew that she couldn't persuade Yenji. Yenji always planned before taking action. She would never act impulsively. Even if she wanted to kill these two people, she wouldn't do it immediately. I'm leaving too. You have to be careful. I got the inheritance. After I reach Tao sculpting in the future, I will come back here. Nalan Rushue just told Yenji to be careful. Since Ning Cheng had fallen, she wouldn't stay on the periphery of the Grand Essence ruins public square. She wanted to finish her own things. If Yenji hadn't killed these two people after she reached Tao sculpting, she would take action. After going into seclusion for a year, Ning Cheng heard about what happened a year ago. He guessed that heartless Monk would come to find him, but he didn't expect that he would actually go. It seemed that it was always good to prepare for a rainy day. After leaving the cave, Ning Cheng wore the mask he had refined and came to the quest hall. He had refined artifacts for a year, but he could only refine low-rank spirit artifacts. Because it was a mask-type weapon that he refined himself, ordinary Tao sculpting cultivators wouldn't be able to see his appearance. Even cultivators above Tao sculpting wouldn't be able to see through him if they didn't use their spiritual consciousness to scan him. He was just an inconspicuous rogue cultivator on a mission. Therefore, there shouldn't be any experts specifically looking for him. What's more, there weren't many experts above Tao sculpting in the Grand Essence ruins public square. Ning Cheng quickly found that he was wrong. A year ago, there weren't many experts above the Tao sculpting realm here. In fact, there were only a few of them. This time, as soon as he entered the quest hall, he saw 7 or 8 powerful auras. Even if he didn't use his spiritual consciousness to scan them, he knew that these experts had stronger cultivation than Tao sculpting cultivators. Ning Cheng took in a deep breath and converged his aura. Then, he looked at the big screen with many ordinary cultivators. It didn't take long for Ning Cheng to find the quest to capture the heartless Monk and lifeless Poison Hand. Ning Cheng didn't care about the mission. Since these two dared to attack a cave in the Grand Essence ruins public square, it made sense for them to be wanted by the Grand Essence ruins public square. However, Ning Cheng soon did not think so, because he saw the reward for the two of them. It was 2 million points for each of them. Moreover, they wanted them alive. Even those who provided information about these two people would be able to obtain 500,000 points, which made Ning Cheng's heart suddenly skip a beat. He was just an insignificant rogue cultivator here. Even if someone sneak attacked him and killed him, The Grand Essence Ruins Public Square's cave would never pay such a high price to capture these two people. The only possibility was that this wasn't a task issued by the Grand Essence Ruins Public Square cave. The G and the mission, not the mission. The mission. And the two. Tian only. Only, Qing, dead, and the king. And Su. Only the two, and had. Only he, of Ning Qing started to hypothesize that if this wanted person was after him, or if this person wanted to know if he had truly fallen or not, then looking for the living lifeless poison hand and the heartless monk would be excusable. But who would pay such a high price to find him? The most likely suspects were lifeless poison hand and the heartless monk. But these two were wanted. Apart from them, there was only Beyond Heaven Path. He had only offended a few people since coming to the Grand Essence Ruins. Ning Qing also knew that Beyond Heaven Path wouldn't dare to look for him through the heartless monk and lifeless poison hand. What's more, Beyond Heaven Path didn't have the strength to do so. Ning Qing walked to a corner of the quest hall and asked for a cup of ordinary spiritual tea. He picked up the spiritual tea and took a sip unconsciously. Just as he was about to put down the spiritual tea, he saw a man with a striped face walk into the quest hall. Ninth Prince? Ning Qing quickly determined that this person wasn't the Ninth Prince. This person's face looked similar to the Ninth Prince, Manjuran. He had a few lines on his face and looked a bit similar. But he definitely wasn't Manjuran. Thinking of Manjuran, the leaf covering Ning Cheng's thoughts suddenly opened up, and Ning Cheng's heart suddenly became as clear as a mirror. The Grand Essence C's Ninth Prince had returned. Only his father had the courage to come up with so many points to find Ning Cheng's whereabouts. Since the Ninth Prince's father had such courage, it naturally wasn't just to avenge the Ninth Prince. Rather, it was because of his five-colored star splitter arrow. Manjuran knew about the power of his five-colored star splitter arrow. Presumably, Manjuran would tell this news to his father, which meant that his father had come looking for the five-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Qing didn't know the cultivation of the Ninth Prince's father. But Ning Qing could guess that his father was definitely a super powerhouse. Facing such a powerhouse, an eternal cultivator, looking for him, Ning Cheng's heart suddenly turned cold. He felt sure that once any news about him leaked out, he wouldn't be able to escape to the Grand Essence Ruins. Ning Qing forced himself to calm down. He slowly took in a deep breath and thought about what he should do. Although the man with the striped face wasn't Manjuran, he definitely had a relationship with Manjuran. Maybe he was Manjuran's brother. After drinking the spiritual tea, Ning Qing stood up. Since the Ninth Prince's father had put a bounty on his head, he couldn't come here wearing a mask again. If he appeared with a mask-type weapon, people wouldn't recognize him at first glance. But at the same time, he would also attract the most suspicion. An hour later, Ning Qing entered the depths of the Grand Essence Ruins. He took off the mask and changed his appearance in a straightforward way. Under Ning Cheng's deliberate actions, the original contours of his face turned into an ordinary face. The first impression that this face gave people was that it had to do missions in the Grand Essence Ruins over a long period of time. On his exposed neck, there was even a scar left behind by a poison-attributed demonic beast. His hair was no longer gray but had turned ashen white. After doing all this, Ning Qing felt a little relieved. Although these changes would gradually disappear as he cultivated, or he could remove them with a drop of glimmer of dawn ice essence, at least for now, no one would recognize him as Ning Qing. For a powerful starry sky cultivator, the easiest thing to change was one's appearance. What was truly difficult to change was a person's aura. A person's cultivation method determined that person's aura. If Ning Qing didn't have the mysterious yellow formless, he wouldn't have changed his appearance in vain. It might be difficult for others to change their aura, but it wasn't difficult for the mysterious yellow formless. The mysterious yellow formless was invisible and formless, and it could change one's aura. As long as it wasn't someone close to him, no one would be able to recognize him from his aura. Unless a top-level powerhouse had known Ning Qing for a long time and saw him changing his aura, that person would be able to find clues about him. In fact, the strongest person Ning Qing knew before was Pan Qian. A few days later, Ning Qing, with his appearance and aura completely changed, returned to the Grand Essence Ruins Quest Hall. He wanted to see if anyone could recognize him. If someone could, he would immediately escape to the Grand Essence Ruins. Half a year later, an artifact crafting stall in the Grand Essence Ruins public square became famous. This artifact crafting stall was called Wanderer Artifact Crafting, and the owner of the artifact crafting stall was called Wanderer. This wanderer's cultivation and appearance couldn't be compared to the magic treasures he had refined. Don't look at Wanderer's ordinary appearance, which made him look unremarkable. However, the low-rank spirit artifacts he crafted were top-notch. They were even more beautiful and powerful than the low-rank spirit artifacts in the Quest Hall's merchant house. But that wasn't the main point. Wanderer only needed to provide the materials and then provide some points or spirit crystals for the artifact crafting stall. This way, the price was only half of the price in the Quest Hall's merchant house. No cultivator in the Grand Essence Ruins didn't know about Wanderer's artifact crafting stall. Most cultivators who wanted low-rank spirit artifacts wouldn't go to the merchant house to buy them. Instead, they would come to this artifact crafting stall. Unfortunately, this artifact crafting stall could only refine low-rank spirit artifacts. It couldn't refine middle-rank spirit artifacts. This artifact crafting stall was located not far from the Grand Essence Ruins Quest Hall. Every month, one had to pay a lot of points to the Quest Hall. Many people tried to persuade Wanderer to set up his stall in another place. They would also go there and buy a shop. However, this Wanderer was a bit dull. Not only was he not good with words, but he also didn't know how to do business. As usual, he paid the points to the Quest Hall and set up his stall next to the Quest Hall. Wanderer's artifact crafting stall was naturally set up by Ning Cheng. He set up the Wanderer's artifact crafting stall next to the Quest Hall. Earning points was just a side job. What he really wanted to wait for was Yen Ji. As long as Yen Ji came back to hand over the task, he would immediately see her. Because of the ninth prince's attention, he didn't dare to publicly issue a task to find Yen Ji. Therefore, he could only use this method to wait. Half a year later, Ning Cheng could already refine middle-rank spirit artifacts. He could even barely refine ordinary high-rank spirit artifacts. However, he still only refined low-rank spirit artifacts. He knew that even with the Quest Hall's protection, he couldn't really snatch the business of those merchant houses. He could only refine low-rank spirit artifacts. Moreover, he paid the points to the Quest Hall every month. Therefore, he could stay here for a long time without any problems. The only thing that disappointed Ning Cheng was that even after half a year, he still hadn't seen Yen Ji's shadow. Ning Cheng didn't know if Yen Ji had joined a sect in the Grand Essence domain or if she was doing a task in the depths of the Grand Essence Ruins. However, Ning Cheng could rest assured about one thing. Countless spiritual consciousnesses had checked him over the past 6 months, and no one had suspected anything. On this day, Ning Cheng was helping a rogue cultivator craft a low-rank spirit artifact when he felt a spiritual consciousness that made him tremble in fear sweep over him. It felt as if someone would see through him at this moment. Ning Cheng suddenly looked up and saw a middle-aged man wearing an imperial crown walking towards the Quest Hall. Although this man didn't release any aura to suppress him, Ning Cheng felt like he was looking up at him. This was definitely the most powerful cultivator he had seen since coming to the Grand Essence Ruins. This person was even more powerful than the red-haired man. Ning Cheng couldn't sense the extent of this man's cultivation. When Ning Cheng saw Manjurin, who had already restored his corporeal body, he instantly understood that this man wearing an imperial crown must be Manjurin's cheap father. Chapter 875. Grandmaster Wanderer, don't sweep around with your spiritual consciousness. Otherwise, no one can save you. The rogue cultivator standing next to Ning Cheng, waiting for Ning Cheng to craft artifacts, saw Ning Cheng's gaze fall on the man wearing the crown and quickly whispered to him. Although Ning Cheng didn't talk much, his artifacts were of high quality and cheap, which made him very popular among rogue cultivators. Most of the cultivators who came to Ning Cheng to craft artifacts referred to him as Grandmaster Wanderer. Ning Cheng looked at the rogue cultivator blankly and asked, "Is that person famous?" The rogue cultivator lowered his voice and said, "That's the Grand Essence C's premier sect, Barbarian Dragon Clan's Dragon Emperor Man Huishan. He's a Dao Essence powerhouse. Don't you think he's famous? Ning Cheng suddenly spoke up. No wonder everyone bowed to him when I saw him. It turns out to be the Barbarian Dragon Clan's Dragon Emperor. The rogue cultivator nodded. Of course. It's strange that the Dragon Emperor would come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square. For this selection, the other sects would at most send some elders. The top 10 sects wouldn't even come here. What's the selection? Ning Cheng quickly asked. He stayed here to craft artifacts, not only to familiarize himself with artifact crafting methods, but also to wait for Yanji. As for other things, he rarely inquired about them to prevent others from discovering anything unusual. Therefore, he had never heard of the selection mentioned by this rogue cultivator. The rogue cultivator smiled and said, "You know that the Grand Essence Great Meet is about to start, right?" "I know about it," Ning Cheng replied. He didn't know when the Grand Essence Great Meet would start, but he knew about it. The rogue cultivator pointed to the low-rank spirit artifact in Ning Cheng's hand and said, "I prepared this low-rank spirit artifact for the Grand Essence Great Meet. Can anyone participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet?" Ning Cheng asked in confusion. The rogue cultivator shook his head and said, "Of course not. Only some sects are eligible to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. The Grand Essence Great Meet has rich rewards, so how can rogue cultivators have a share? However, before each Grand Essence Great Meet, some sects would come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square to recruit some powerful rogue cultivators to make up for the lack of sect disciples. Originally, some powerful sects wouldn't bother doing this. But these sects were afraid that some of the powerful sects would come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square to recruit rogue cultivators. Over time, this became a rule. During the period before the Grand Essence Ruins Great Meet, all the sects came together to recruit rogue cultivators to fill the slots for the Great Meet. In the next few days, the major sects will start recruiting disciples. Did you see the many temporary buildings on the edge of the Grand Essence Ruins public square? Because of this rogue cultivator's reminder, Ning Cheng saw some temporary buildings built using artifacts at the edge of the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Some of the buildings even had the signboards of the sections. Clearly, this rogue cultivator was telling the truth. These sects were indeed here to recruit disciples. Ning Cheng asked in confusion, "I heard that the reward for the Grand Essence Great Meet is the extraterritorial Spirit Spring. If so many rogue cultivators were to participate, wouldn't that reduce the chances of the true sect disciples?" The rogue cultivator, on hearing Ning Cheng's words, showed a smile. "You think too much. The extraterritorial Spirit Spring is a reward for the top 10 of the Grand Essence Great Meet. It has nothing to do with recruiting rogue cultivators. Because every time before the Grand Essence Great Meet, there would be a Grand Essence Mystic Realm to snatch. The major sects recruit rogue cultivators to join them in snatching things from the mystic realms. Only the top 100 cultivators who obtain divine grasses and other treasures in the mystic realms have a chance to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. Therefore, the real Grand Essence Great Meet is a competition between the top 100 cultivators in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. It has nothing to do with others. I want to be selected by the other sects because I want to get some treasures in the mystic realm. If I can get a Dao fruit as a reward, it would be worth it." Ning Cheng understood that it was to recruit cannon fodder. He didn't need to ask to understand that snatching things in the mystic realm was much more dangerous than snatching things in the Grand Essence Ruins. Since the Grand Essence Mystic Realm chose to open before the Grand Essence Great Meet, it meant that there must be a lot of good things inside. How could the competition inside not be fierce? "Excuse me, which sects came here to recruit disciples this time? What do you mean by the top 10 sects?" Ning Cheng knew that his question sounded a bit stupid, so he lowered his voice. Sure enough, when the rogue cultivator heard Ning Cheng's question, his eyes flashed with astonishment. But he quickly returned to normal and explained in detail. The top 10 sects are the 3 saints, 3 spirits, and 4 deep seas. They refer to River Luo Sacred Sect, 7-Star Sacred Shrine, and 9 Revolving Sacred Dao Pond, Flaming Feather Spirit Mountain, Profound Moon Spirit Gate, and Desolate Spirit Palace. Grand Essence Seas Barbarian Dragon Clan, Silver Dragon Clan, Sunken Fish Palace, and Mysterious Fairy Ancient Clan. I heard that Mysterious Fairy Ancient Clan hasn't appeared in the world for a long time. They don't even participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. As for the rest of the smaller sects, there are too many of them. I can't explain them all. You can come and see for yourself when the time comes. Ning Qing handed the low-rank spirit artifact in his hand to the rogue cultivator. Your weapon is finished. Since I heard you say so much today, I'm going to try my luck. I'll take half of your points. The rogue cultivator felt overjoyed when he heard that Ning Qing only wanted half of his points. He quickly took out his white card and transferred the points to Ning Qing. After thanking him repeatedly, he left. After the rogue cultivator left, Ning Qing also put away his artifact crafting stall. Even after waiting for half a year, Yan Ji still hadn't appeared. Although he could continue to wait, he didn't have that much time. After half a year, his artifact crafting level had soared. Moreover, he had also collected a lot of high-quality artifact crafting materials. Therefore, he decided to refine a few high-rank spirit artifacts for himself first. As for the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, Ning Qing decided to enter it. If he could reach the top 100 in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, he might be able to represent one of the sects to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. That way, he might even be able to enter the extraterritorial spirit spring for cultivation. 2 days later, when Ning Qing came out of the rest stop, the Grand Essence Ruins public square had long since been occupied by sects of various sizes. Unlike what that rogue cultivator said before, Ning Qing not only saw a bunch of small sects on the Grand Essence Ruins public square, but he also saw 9 of the top 10 sections. Apart from the Mysterious Fairy Ancient Clan, almost all of the top 10 sects had arrived. Countless rogue cultivators had gathered in the public square. For them, this was an opportunity. Once selected to participate in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, they might have a chance to advance to the Dao Sculpting Realm. The Grand Essence Mystic Realm might be dangerous, but if one wanted to stand at a higher place, where wouldn't it be dangerous? Ning Qing walked around half a circle and saw a weapon in front of each sect that tested one's spiritual consciousness and celestial essence. In this kind of selection, cultivators didn't care about the qualifications of their spiritual roots. Instead, they only looked at the density of celestial essence and the penetration of one's spiritual consciousness. Everyone understood what was going on. This kind of selection wasn't meant to train you as a sect's disciple, but rather to take advantage of each other. After participating in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, each person would get their own benefits. After that, everyone would go their separate ways. Ning Qing stopped at the 7-star Sacred Shrine station and saw an acquaintance, Yan Xishuang. He had saved Yan Xishuang and then teamed up with Yan Xishuang to obtain a drop of 3,000 weak water and a fragment of the Good Fortune Azure Lotus. As a result, the drop of 3,000 weak water went to him, while the Azure Lotus fragment went to Yan Xishuang. Ning Qing still had a good impression of this woman. This woman paid attention to equal exchange. She didn't take advantage of others, nor was she the rude kind. Ning Qing only knew about Nirvana's heart because of Yan Xishuang. Speaking of which, Yan Xishuang was the first to discover Nirvana's heart. However, she encountered a problem while collecting the Nirvana Bluestone and almost died. Seeing Yan Xishuang standing at the 7-star Sacred Shrine station, Ning Qing realized that this woman was also from one of the 3 sacred sections. Ying Yongxian, who came with Shan Yaozhen before, was also from the 7-star Sacred Shrine. However, Ying Yongxian didn't come today. Yan Xishuang's aura had also become much purer. Not only did it become much purer, but it also doubled in strength compared to before. Ning Qing knew that this was the effect of the Azure Lotus fragment. When he first met Yan Xishuang, although she was at the full circle of the Eternal Realm, she wasn't any stronger than him. But now, Yan Xishuang had definitely surpassed the full circle of the Eternal Realm. According to Ning Qing's speculations, Yan Xishuang definitely hadn't reached the Dao Sculpting Realm yet. With Yan Xishuang's cultivation, there was only one reason why she hadn't reached the Dao Sculpting Realm yet. That is, she wanted to enter the extraterritorial spirit spring to transform her spirit essence. At this moment, Yan Xishuang's aura was clean and pure. If she could transform her spirit essence in the extraterritorial spirit spring, her future would truly be bright. Others might not know what was going on, but Ning Qing knew it. He had the mysterious yellow bead, so he naturally understood that only a good fortune treasure could cause such a big change in Yan Xishuang. Yan Xishuang sat on the side with a calm expression. Her unparalleled beauty attracted many people to come to the 7-star sacred shrine to take the test. In terms of appearance, Yan Xishuang was more beautiful than Kong Ning and Shan Yaotzen. What Ning Qing appreciated more was her attitude towards things. She remained calm and rational. Since he had to join a sect, Ning Qing decided to join the 7-star sacred shrine. The 7-star sacred shrine was one of the top 10 sections. Even if he did something in the mystic realm, it wouldn't affect the sect. This was one of the reasons. Secondly, the big sects would have more slots to enter the mystic realm. Most importantly, Ning Qing knew Yan Xishuang. Senior apprentice sister, I want to participate in the 7-star sacred shrine's disciple selection. Ning Qing walked up to Yan Xishuang and spoke with cupped fists. Yan Xishuang apparently didn't recognize Ning Qing. She nodded and pointed to a testing artifact next to her. Then she spoke with a gentle tone. Stimulate all your celestial essence and spiritual consciousness and try it on this testing artifact. Ning Qing walked up to the testing artifact and started to gather his strength. It was impossible to stimulate all his celestial essence and spiritual consciousness. The celestial essence scale and spiritual consciousness scale on this testing artifact were both 10. Ning Qing had seen other cultivators take the test before. Generally, cultivators would have a celestial essence scale of 1 to 5. Only a few could reach 6, and only 1 or 2 could exceed 7. As for spiritual consciousness, it was generally slightly lower than the celestial essence scale. Ning Qing decided to use 40% of his strength. This level should be enough to guarantee him entry to the 7-star sacred shrine. Chapter 876. Ning Qing punched out, causing the surrounding space to erupt with slight explosions. Boom! His fist blasted on the testing magic treasure. The testing magic treasure shone brightly, and the 2 markings on the crystal rapidly rose. The celestial essence scale rose past 6 in just a short time, and only stopped when it approached the 7 mark. Even the spiritual consciousness scale climbed to the 6 mark. A burst of exclamations erupted from the surroundings. Although Ning Qing's celestial essence punch did not exceed 7, it was infinitely close to it. More importantly, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness had already exceeded 6 scales. With such strength, he would have no problem entering the 7-star sacred shrine. Some cultivators who knew Ning Qing came forward to congratulate him. Previously, they had only come to Ning City to craft artifacts, but they did not expect the strength of this artifact crafting master to be so formidable. Yan Xishuang looked at Ning Qing in surprise. Ning Qing didn't seem to have a high cultivation, yet he could erupt with such a powerful force. Using this kind of magic treasure to test a cultivator's cultivation was naturally not very accurate. However, there was one thing. Once the scale of this magic treasure exceeded 5, it would be very difficult to increase it. Since Ning Qing could punch out a celestial essence with a power scale of almost 7, it meant that there was no problem with his strength. She quickly nodded to Ning Qing. What is your name? You've passed the test. After the disciple recruitment ends, come back with us to the 7-star sacred shrine. Thank you, senior sister. My name is Nian Qiong and I'm a wandering craftsman. Ning Qing quickly cupped his fists and thanked them before standing behind the 7-star sacred shrine with the other 2. Ning Qing considered that the Dragon Emperor of Barbarian Dragon Clan was looking for him, so he simply removed the word Qing from his name. Junior sister Xishuang, long time no see. A deep man's voice sounded, and a purple-faced man with a big smile appeared in front of Yan Xishuang. Ning Qing felt a powerful water chi fluctuation coming from this man. He had also felt this kind of water chi fluctuation from Manjurin. Unlike Manjurin, this person had a purple face and no ripples on his face. Yan Xishuang calmly replied with a polite greeting, "It turns out to be the second prince." Looks like the Barbarian Dragon Clan attaches great importance to this disciple selection. Hearing about the second prince and the Barbarian Dragon Clan, Ning Cheng completely understood. This person was Manjuran's second brother and also the son of Dragon Emperor Man Huishan. Ning Cheng had heard from the silver-haired woman that Man Huishan had more than 100 sons. From the looks of it was true. The purple-faced man, on hearing Yan Xishuang's reply, showed a soft expression. Yes, I knew that junior apprentice Sister Xishuang might come here, so I took the initiative to apply. Ning Cheng looked at the purple-faced man and understood that this fellow wanted to pursue Yan Xishuang. If Yan Xishuang agreed to it, then it would truly be a case of flowers and cow dung. Yan Xishuang spoke up in a flat tone. Second prince, if there's nothing else, please let me through. I still have someone to test. I'm fine. The purple-faced man quickly stepped aside. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I wonder if junior apprentice Sister Xishuang has the time to go to a rest stop with me for a cup of spiritual tea? I'm sorry, but I don't have time. Yan Xishuang didn't even bother to look for an answer. Second brother, we're all very busy, but you're very free, hee. A slightly sarcastic voice sounded. Ning Cheng retracted his spiritual consciousness and gaze. He was too familiar with this person. It was 9th Prince Manjuran, whom he had killed once and whose corporeal body Pan Qian had smashed apart. The purple-faced man smiled at Yan Xishuang, but he wasn't as polite to this 9th prince. He gave a cold snort. 9th brother, you have the nerve to say that. If not for you being so useless, would my royal father have come to this broken place? The purple-faced man stopped himself in time. It's just that Manjuran ridiculed him in front of his sweetheart, which made him feel uncomfortable. Manjuran was just about to speak again when he suddenly saw Ning Cheng behind Yan Xishuang. His gaze immediately fell on Ning Cheng, and after carefully looking at Ning Cheng for a while, he frowned and asked, What's your name? Yan Xishuang's tone turned cold. This is my 7-star sacred shrine's newly recruited disciple, Nian Xiong. If the two princes have nothing else to say, please don't interfere with my sex recruitment. The Barbarian Dragon Clan indeed had a Tao Perfection powerhouse, but the 7-star sacred shrine didn't fear it. Although the 7-star sacred shrine didn't have any Tao Perfection powerhouses, it had 2 Tao Fusion powerhouses. Moreover, apart from Man Suotian, the Barbarian Dragon Clan didn't have any other powerhouses. Even Dragon Emperor Man Huishan was only at the full circle Tao Essence realm. One could say that without Man Suotian, the Barbarian Dragon Clan wouldn't have qualified to enter the top 10 sects, let alone become the leader of the 4 Seas sections. When the purple-faced second prince heard Yan Xishuang's words, he quickly pulled Manjuran away. 9th brother, don't stay here. Come with me. This time, Manjuran didn't speak any nonsense and silently followed the second prince. He still couldn't help but think about Ning Cheng. He had never seen this person before. So why did he feel an uncontrollable killing intent in his heart when he saw this Nian Qiong? The instincts of the Grand Essence Sea's Barbarian Dragon Clan were extremely powerful. Even if Ning Cheng changed his appearance and converged his aura, he still couldn't completely hide himself from Manjuran's instinctive killing intent. Manjuran suddenly stopped. Who was the person he wanted to kill the most? It was the cultivator named Ning Cheng. At this moment, he felt 90% sure that Nian Qiong was Ning Cheng. After guessing that Nian Qiong was Ning Cheng, Manjuran's first thought was to tell this news to his father, Man Huishan. But as soon as this idea popped up, he quickly extinguished it. If he told this news to his father, this Ning Cheng would definitely die. At the same time, he would also be able to avenge his father's death. However, the 5-colored star splitter arrow wouldn't fall into his hands. His father didn't come to the Grand Essence Ruins to avenge him, but for the 5-colored star splitter arrow. Manjuran understood this point better than anyone else. If he couldn't get the 5-colored star splitter arrow, then forget it. But now that he had a chance, he couldn't let it go. He wanted this arrow no matter what. Ning Cheng joined the 7-star sacred shrine because he wanted to go to the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. At that time, as long as he found a few people to secretly kill Ning Cheng in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, who would know that he snatched the 5-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng's five-colored star splitter arrow was indeed powerful, but no matter how powerful it was, he could only shoot it once. As long as he grasped this point, he wouldn't have to worry about killing Ning Cheng. The more Manjurin thought about this plan, the more feasible it seemed. From Manjurin's gaze and expression before he left, Ning Cheng realized that Manjurin might have recognized him. At this moment, Ning Cheng couldn't wait to leave immediately. But when he saw Manjurin not making any moves, not even his spiritual consciousness falling on him, Ning Cheng started to doubt it again. But this doubt didn't last long. Ning Cheng believed that Manjurin had recognized him, and there was no need for luck at all. The reason why Manjurin didn't make any moves wasn't because he didn't recognize him, but because he didn't want to tell his father about him. The only possibility was that Manjurin wanted to take everything from him. Manjurin had gone to the mysterious yellow starland alone to do those things. This person had great ambitions. But after knowing that Manjurin wanted to take the five-colored star splitter arrow for himself, Ning Cheng wasn't in a hurry. If he didn't know that Manjurin recognized him, he might have suffered a huge loss. Now that Manjurin recognized him, he didn't believe that he couldn't kill this fellow. 3 days passed and no one came looking for him. Ning Cheng realized that his guess was right. Manjurin really wanted to take everything from him. 3 days later, the major sects on the Grand Essence Ruins public square finally finished recruiting rogue cultivators. The 7-star sacred shrine had recruited a total of 20 people, and Ning Cheng was just one of them. Among the 20 people, Ning Cheng's strength only ranked in the middle, which wasn't too outstanding. The 7-star sacred shrine only had one elder leading the team. Ning Cheng couldn't see through this elder's strength, but he was sure that this elder wasn't as strong as Barbarian Dragon Clan's patriarch, Man Huishan. As for Yan Xishuang, she most likely came to help. The Grand Essence Ruins might be far from the entrance to the Grand Essence Domain, but no matter how far it was, it wouldn't take long to teleport there. This was Ning Cheng's first time entering the Grand Essence Domain. But after entering the Grand Essence Domain, he understood why the sects of the Grand Essence realm gathered here. The spirit chi in the Grand Essence Domain was more than a dozen times stronger than the outside world. Moreover, this was just an ordinary place. Some sects would choose places with denser spirit chi. Comparing this place to the Grand Essence Ruins and Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City made Ning Cheng understand the truth that the strong grew stronger. Half a day later, Ning Cheng and the others arrived at the entrance of the 7-star sacred shrine. The 7-star sacred shrine had a majestic atmosphere, and the spirit chi here was several times denser than the outside world. Standing here, Ning Cheng even had an illusion that the laws within the 7-star sacred shrine space were more stable than in other places. If the 7-star sacred shrine was like this, then it must be the same for other sacred or spirit gates. After entering the sect, Ning Cheng and the others were each assigned a room and a jade card. After that, no one came to ask about it. Returning to the room assigned to him, Ning Cheng used his spiritual consciousness to sweep the jade card and immediately caught some of the information inside it. The Grand Essence Mystic Realm would open in 5 months. During these 5 months, they could move around in the outer sect of the 7-star sacred shrine. They could also go out, but they had to come back before the Grand Essence Mystic Realm opened. There was one more thing that they had to abide by. That is, they weren't allowed to enter the inner sect. Otherwise, they would die without mercy. Ning Cheng put away the jade card and shook his head. The 7-star sacred shrine didn't even treat them as an outer sect. At best, it treated them as a batch of cannon fodder. As cannon fodder, one must have the consciousness of being cannon fodder and not run around. Even without this jade card's warning, Ning Cheng didn't plan to go out. He planned to refine a fake 5-colored star splitter arrow in the next few months. Manjurin couldn't possibly not know how powerful his 5-colored star splitter arrow was. On the premise that he knew how powerful his 5-colored star splitter arrow was, Manjurin still dared to keep it for himself. It meant that he had confidence in himself. In any case, he had to take some precautions. Ning Cheng was just about to activate the restrictions around his room when someone appeared outside his room. Chapter 877. Brother Nian, sorry to disturb you. This person did not wait for Ning Cheng to speak and first greeted Ning Cheng with cupped fists. Ning Cheng chuckled, so it turns out to be Brother Xiong. Brother Xiong, please come in. Ning Cheng knew this person. He was a rogue cultivator selected by the 7-star sacred shrine along with him. His name was Xiong Tsang. His cultivation was higher than him, late-stage eternal realm. The strength displayed by this fellow was almost the same as him, with his celestial essence close to 7, while his spiritual consciousness had broken through to 6. Xiong Tsang's appearance was similar to his name. He was burly and had a big face. His whole body was almost square. After Xiong Tsang came in and sat down, Ning Cheng casually activated the restriction and spoke with a smile. Since Brother Xiong came looking for me, then there must be something. Brother Nian, have you ever thought about staying in the 7-star sacred shrine and then entering the inner sect? Xiong Tsang asked directly when he heard Ning Cheng's question. Enter the 7-star sacred shrine's inner sect? Ning Cheng asked in doubt. He knew that the 7-star sacred shrine wanted to use them as cannon fodder, so how could they let them enter the inner sect? Xiong Tsang spoke up in a low tone. Brother Nian, you're also a rogue cultivator. You should know how difficult it is for a rogue cultivator to achieve Dao sculpting. Even if we obtain the Dao fruit, I'm afraid that our chances of reaching Dao sculpting would not be high. There was no Dao arena to listen to the Dao, no divine powers pavilion, and no cultivation technique hall. What we can do is to fumble around on our own, lacking a guiding direction. If we rogue cultivators want to go further, we can only join a sect. Ning Cheng remained silent. He wouldn't join the 7-star sacred shrine, and he also didn't agree with Xiong Tsang's words. When one's cultivation was low, a guide was indeed very important. However, once one reached the eternal realm, they would have to rely on their own comprehension of all things and their understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. Even if they had a powerful master to guide them, it would still be of limited use. However, Ning Cheng was somewhat interested in the Dao sanctum that Xiong Tsang spoke about. The dojo was a place where some powerful Dao-confirming cultivators would discuss the Dao. If one could go and listen, it would be beneficial to one's understanding of the Dao. Every sect had its own Dao rite, and the most famous one in the Grand Essence realm was the Grand Essence Dao rite. It was just that it was very difficult for itinerant cultivators to enter and listen to Dao in these places. Xiong Tsang, on seeing Ning Cheng's silence, thought that Ning Cheng agreed with his words. Therefore, he continued, the 7-star sacred shrine has 2 Dao fusion powerhouses, and the spirit technique pavilion has countless powerful spirit techniques. Then how can Brother Xiong join the 7-star sacred shrine? Ning Cheng asked. Xiong Tsang nodded. That's exactly what I wanted to talk to Brother Nian about. Brother Nian should know that entering the Grand Essence mystic realm this time has a high chance of falling. However, it also has a high chance of us reaching the sky in a single bound. If we can collect enough divine grasses in the mystic realm and rank in the top 10, we would have a chance to represent the 7-star sacred shrine in the Grand Essence Great Meet. Wait. Ning Cheng interrupted Xiong Tsang's words. Brother Xiong, you said that only the top 10 in the Grand Essence mystic realm have the opportunity to represent the 7-star sacred shrine in the Grand Essence Great Meet? How come I heard that the Grand Essence Great Meet is only for the top 100? Hearing Ning Cheng's words, Xiong Tsang laughed. Brother Nian, you're too naive. Taking the top 100 to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet is not bad. But only the top 10 in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm have the opportunity to participate. The remaining 90 people are allocated by the major sections. Brother Nian, don't tell me you don't even know about this? The Grand Essence Mystic Realm opens mainly for these sects to plunder divine grasses and some top-grade heavenly treasures. To put it bluntly, we hold our heads in our hands and serve these major sections. Speaking of this, Xiong Tsang showed a self-deprecating smile. It's equivalent to us rogue cultivators desperately competing for divine grasses in the mystic realm for the major sections. While those major sects watch us fight to the death while waiting for us to hand over the divine grasses we risked our lives to obtain to them. Ning Cheng's heart sank and his expression turned a little ugly. He entered the mystic realm to search for divine grasses because he needed a lot of them. But more importantly, He wanted to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. Although many cultivators entered the mystic realm, Ning Cheng still felt confident about entering the top 100. But he didn't feel confident about entering the top 10. From the looks of it, that rogue cultivator also didn't know much about it. Searching for natural treasures didn't depend on one's strength. It also depended on one's luck. Xiong Tsang didn't know about Ning Cheng's thoughts and continued, "We can join forces. As long as we can reach the top 10, we can get 2 spots to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. At that time, we can offer our spots to the sects and join them." Ning Cheng calmed down and asked, "Brother Xiong, how many cultivators enter the mystic realm to search for natural treasures? I believe Brother Xiong already knows about it. But why can Brother Xiong help us enter the top 10? Xiong Tsang showed a smile. "If Brother Nian is willing to join forces with me, I will naturally tell you my method." Ning Cheng suddenly showed a smile. "Brother Xiong, please. I like to be alone. I just want to go in and find a Dao fruit. I don't have much hope of joining a sacred shrine." When Ning Cheng heard Xiong Tsang's words, he immediately understood what Xiong Tsang meant. Xiong Tsang most likely had a set of sneak attacks. He most likely wanted to kill other cultivators in the mystic realm and snatch their divine grasses to reach the top 10. This kind of robbery went against Ning Cheng's conscience. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't join forces with Xiong Tsang. Hearing Ning Cheng's words, Xiong Tsang's eyes flashed with disappointment. A moment later, he stood up and cupped his fists towards Ning Cheng. "In that case, I'll take my leave." Ning Cheng waited for Xiong Tsang to leave before activating the restrictions around the room again. Xiong Tsang's proposal reminded him that since Xiong Tsang could think of robbing others to obtain divine grasses, there must be others who could think of robbing others to obtain divine grasses. From the looks of it, he not only had to guard against Mandarin but also against these rogue cultivators. In the next few months, Ning Cheng didn't go anywhere. In addition to crafting a few spirit artifacts for himself, he also crafted a 5-colored star splitter arrow. The power of this arrow couldn't compare to the real 5-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng wanted to make this arrow look similar to the 5-colored star splitter arrow. One could say that this arrow couldn't even compare to an ordinary middle-rank spirit artifact bow. Ning Cheng didn't craft this arrow for its power. Rather, he crafted it to deal with Mandarin. In addition, Ning Cheng also crafted a large number of trap and kill array discs. Ning Cheng's attainment in the Tao of arrays was much higher than his cultivation. If he didn't make use of it, it would be a waste of all the time he spent studying the Tao of arrays. Although the influence of array discs wasn't as strong as array formations, in a showdown between powerhouses, as long as one had a slight advantage, it could change the outcome of the battle. 5 months passed by quickly. On this day, when Ning Cheng finished crafting another trap and kill array, the Jade card received a call to assemble. Ning Cheng put away his things and arrived at the public square. Xiong Tsang had already arrived. When Ning Cheng saw him standing with another rogue cultivator, he understood that this fellow had found a companion. This time, the leader of the group changed to an old man with white hair and a beard. Ning Cheng couldn't see the old man's cultivation, but he could feel that this old man was strong, most likely a second-step Tao-confirming powerhouse. Ning Cheng also noticed that in addition to the 20 rogue cultivators on the public square, there were also many disciples from the 7-star sacred shrine. Among these disciples, Ning Cheng saw Yan Xishuang, but he still didn't see Ying Yongxian. A huge black airship landed in the middle of the public square, and the white-haired old man landed on the bow of the airship and said to the cultivators on the public square, "This time, our 7-star sacred shrine will have a total of 70 disciples enter the Grand Essence mystic realm. Originally, the disciples belonging to the 7-star sacred shrine can use the divine grasses and treasures found in the mystic realm to exchange for the sect's task points, spirit pills, or even spirit techniques. If you contribute a lot, you can even exchange for Dao pills and Dao fruits. As for the disciples who later join my 7-star sacred shrine, you can also exchange the divine grasses found in the mystic realm for spirit pills, spirit techniques, or cultivation methods. If you contribute a lot, you can also exchange for Dao fruits or Dao pills. If you rank in the top 10, you will have the opportunity to join the 7-star Sacred Shrines inner sect. You can freely enter and exit the 7-star Sacred Shrines Tao Right, Spirit Technique Pavilion. No wonder they weren't afraid of cultivators hiding things. Even if a rogue cultivator collected a lot of divine grasses and hid them, what was the use? At most, they could exchange them for some merchant houses. Could a rogue cultivator ask someone who could refine spirit pills to help them refine pills? As for refining Tao pills, they couldn't even think about it. As for exchanging for Tao fruits, Ningqing only needed to think about how Kong Ning used more than 400,000 points to exchange for a falling scar fruit to understand that Tao fruits weren't easy to obtain. Not every cultivator was like him, a Tao sculpting pill deity. Perhaps for these rogue cultivators, if they obtained a lot of divine grasses, they could hand them over to the sect and exchange them for cultivation resources that could be used directly. This was the best way. Of course, I have to remind the 20 disciples who later joined my 7-star Sacred Shrine. After the ranking, you must hand over 1/5 of the divine grasses you obtain to the sect before you can exchange for anything else. If you obtain less than 100 divine grasses, you must hand over half of them to the sect. When Ningqing heard this, he couldn't help but think that the 7-star Sacred Shrine's own disciples didn't have to hand over 1/5. As for the rogue cultivators who joined later, they had to hand over some divine grasses to enjoy the same treatment as the 7-star Sacred Shrine's disciples. Ningqing didn't feel surprised. It would have been strange if the 7-star Sacred Shrine didn't do this. Since the 7-star Sacred Shrine provided the opportunity to enter the mystic realm, it naturally had to collect some taxes. If there's no problem, everyone, get on the airship and head to the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. After the white-haired old man finished speaking, the cultivators waiting on the public square immediately flew onto the airship. The rogue cultivators, in order to build a relationship with the 7-star Sacred Shrine's disciples, lowered their posture and asked some questions. Ningqing didn't step forward and speak too much. Since a dragon emperor was staring at him, it was best not to talk nonsense. From the discussions of these cultivators, Ningqing also learned that the white-haired old man leading the team this time was called Fan Mu, a Tao essence powerhouse at the second step of Tao confirming. A day later, the 7-star Sacred Shrine's airship stopped. From the deck, Ningqing saw that the airship didn't stop in the starry sky but on a very empty wasteland. At this moment, many temporary caves and buildings had already been set up around the wasteland, most likely belonging to some of the sects that had arrived earlier. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.